Jones, and I'm here to tell you folks, the world has fallen. The fascist globalist overlords, oh, they're implementing the Great Reset. You don't believe me? I've seen the tapes. Watch it, folks. Watch as these pot-bellied Zoomer goblins work with the Illuminati to pit us against each other. I promised I'd be a good boy.
Ugh, I'm a good boy.
There's only one cure, folks, and that's liberty. And there's no better channel to find freedom than Fabian Liberty. Anarchy is order. Government is civil war.
You're offensive. Police lives matter?
We're just trying to do school.
What?
You guys have the same sticker as the others.
But this is our space. You're making the space uncomfortable. But you're white.
You're fucking a white male!
What is one way you combat racism? I don't root for white people on the sidewalk.
They want your wallets, they want your guns, they want the wieners off your sons. Democrats.
Oh, we should film
So let's say, for the sake of argument, that all of the water levels around the world rise by let's say 5 feet. You think that people aren't going to just sell their homes and move?
Just one small problem. Sell their houses to who, Ben? Fucking Aquaman! Vaccine!
Children, they're spreading COVID throughout the population at higher numbers. And people are not entitled to turn themselves into deadly biological weapons by spraying disease-laden aerosols wherever they choose, randomly killing innocent people. This is not freedom, this is homicide, and willful ignorance is no excuse.
What the fuck?
Margin of victory yet. It's really impressive. Though, I'm starting to think he might have had help from the Russians.
Look at me, I'm a gay bro. I'm so cool, I'm so neat. I'll never have children and I'm sterilized. But the media says I'm totally cool. I'm a gay frog, I'm a gay fish. It's so good, and I think my daddy actually is.
This is so weird. My OBS doesn't have the chat, but it has the chat. It has the chat on the screen. But it doesn't have it in the menu. I have to go back to the YouTube studio. Yo, what's happening? Nothing much, brother. Just about to do a WIC panel. Kind of like a impromptu thing he wanted to do about Department of Homeland Security. Some documents. The documents. So I'm going to hop on that here in just a second. I was just getting the stream up and running, so I had a bunch of other stuff I had to do today, so I'm not like doing a big stream before that. We might talk and chill or something afterwards, depending on how long the stream goes, or the debate goes, I mean. But I need to switch this over to, not that. I actually need to switch this over to a different camera. And then do this so that I can hop in the Discord. All right, now I'm backstage. I'll be in just a sec. I hate being in like these waiting rooms.
Nope, still can't hear you.
Who, me? You're not talking about me, right? You can hear me fine?
I'm talking about this hammer guy. I can hear you just fine.
Cool.
Cypher, you haven't talked yet, so I don't know if I can hear you yet.
Yeah, I'm trying to get.
Okay, I can't hear you. Yeah, Hammer is the only guy that I can't hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
How does my audio sound?
Little tinny.
You're in a fishbowl.
Okay.
Fabian, are you not gonna use your green screen? You're not gonna put
I'm just gonna turn this off.
No, because
okay.
I can. Because if I do that, then I have to run Logic Capture, and then I have to like have a different camera on my OBS. It's fucking Discord is just so fucking stupid that they don't have integrated green screen stuff.
I mean, that's true, actually. But it helps.
It's like,
dude, my shit's work.
Yeah. I gotta cut you down. You sound like fucking you're screaming in a fishbowl.
Also, your camera's not working anymore.
Yeah. I might have to turn off Discord real quick.
Yeah, I would just do that. Like y'all, you can download a virtual camera with OBS. Just use that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know I can do that, but it's just like it's
Pretty sure that's what Hammer's problem is, though.
It causes
OBS,
issues. It's like I just don't care enough to like need to have a fucking random thing behind me. Like it's fine.
No,
I got a green screen behind me.
It's fine. I just need to change how I'm going to record this. That's all. Shake that.
It's like everything else uses green screen. So like it's really just Discord. So now I just blame Discord instead of blaming the fact that I don't feel like setting up a bunch of shit.
Oh, what the hell? Why did it change? Okay, there it goes. I'll just probably.
So how are both of you doing? How's life?
All right, can't complain.
That's good.
Got some good work done today.
Yeah, I was pretty busy today. had to slap a bunch of stuff together.
Well, hopefully this will be a good show, an interesting topic. The report was, at least to me, eye-catching. I'm always interested in seeing how government institutions interact with the public and in what ways. So I'm curious to see the takes that you both have. I know, Cypher, you've talked to me about how you think this is the report's mischaracterizing what's happening, but we'll go through it, right? We'll get into it.
You're just talking about the intercept one.
Yeah. But I also want to talk about like conceptually these kinds of things as well. So we are going to start off with the report, with the allegations made, but this will go general as well. There's Sparky. Hello. Can you hear me?
What's up?
Hard dicks and helicopters.
Yeah, which one you riding there, Scott?
Whichever one I can find.
There you go, buddy. Always a Coomer.
You got
God bless you, man.
Known Coomer, fucking Fabian Liberty.
Am I backwards to y'all?
No, I can read
Not to me.
Screen. Yeah.
That's all I need to know. Thanks. Figured out how to make it to where I'm not backwards for y'all, and also not backwards for.
Your thinking's backwards enough. We don't have to worry about the words. No, I'm fucking with you, man. Where am I?
It's like we're already starting off with the pot shots, bro.
Dude,
Okay.
after Hunter Avalon's fucking gangster rap bullshit that I saw, I'm just like, oh, come on.
Saying to put you in a gangster mood. It was so good and
You
so
sound
entertaining.
better.
Everyone
Your
should check it
camera's
out.
Clear. You're good.
Okay, cool. I'm just gonna...
No, we actually turn you back up.
I think I don't know if it's Discord. I think it's my computer. Honestly, I think that's the main problem. Is okay. Sorry about that.
It's all good. We aren't live on my end yet. We're on my starting soon screen, so no big deal. You
Okay.
guys have all been on my show before. It's been a while for a couple of you, so I'll just kind of reiterate how this goes. I will introduce a topic. I'll say hi to my audience, and then each of you will get, and I stress this, please, concise introductions and opening thoughts. Just give your thoughts on the situation, your thoughts on the topic at hand, and then we'll get into it. If during the discussion you have trouble getting in, or if you feel like you're being cut off too much, just let me know by raising your hand or DMing me or something. Get my attention, and I'll make sure to make space for you. Are there any questions about tonight? Anything at all?
Not
no.
particularly.
Okay, cool. So if you need to get a drink or use the restroom, we got about 2 minutes before we start this shindig. So now's the time.
Hey, everyone's on time too. That's awesome.
It's odd, but I'm happy for it. It's just now we get to sit awkwardly until I'm ready to.
Oh, no, we can relax and chill out, man. It ain't gonna be awkward.
I've got lo-fi music playing for the stream. Like, I'm just chilling, dude.
Hell yeah.
I have to do that. Like, I have to mentally like chill the fuck out, before because like I mean, like, you know what it's like, Wick. You've seen me on panels before. This is probably going to be a little different, but in most panels, it's like my political ideology just makes me the enemy of everyone on the panel immediately. And so, like, most of these panels, I'm like, shut the fuck up, you dumb socialist. And it's like, dude, he's a Republican. I'm like, exactly. I said what I said. And then, like, so, like, I have to have chill music before I get into these things.
Oh man,
Sorry, we all can't be ANCAPs.
If we could, the world would be a beautiful place, right?
I'm sure.
I've been listening to Rob Norris screech at some dude now for the past like 2.5 hours.
Oh, he was talking to Hutch.
Is that what he's doing right now?
Yeah, he's screeching at Hutch,
Okay.
who is defending adults keeping secrets with children that are not there. So, yeah.
What?
It's about teachers and doctors and other
Oh,
professions.
it's
not
about
just
making
random
sure
fucking
children-
people.
I have no idea what you were talking about, but I knew exactly what you were talking about the way that you worded it, because it's like the way that when you say it that way, it's like, holy fuck, that's horrible. And then they're like, no, they're pronouns. And then people are like, oh, I accept it now.
Yeah,
You framed it differently.
because keeping secrets with kids is a great thing for adults. Ugh. I would.
I just said.
I'm
actually.
Oh, we don't need to
Just
talk
what you
about
said
this.
didn't really register, honestly.
Yeah, like we
It's
could.
not the topic.
Yeah, totally
It's an amazing
unrelated to what
topic.
we're talking about today.
It's not
No,
related.
I guess I mean, we could connect it.
But I am a
with
licensed
government
teacher in like 3
institutions.
states, so I mean, and the topic is about education, so we could link
It's
it.
about
Dog,
college,
will you, dog, look, you do not need to speed run the every Twitch panel becomes about transgender issues before the panel even fucking starts. All right. Like,
Actually, it's
relax.
not about trans with Rob. It's not about trans. It's LGBT. Just blanket. I just thought it was an interesting way to describe it.
If it becomes LGBT, it becomes trans. There's no.
It doesn't matter.
Connecting.
Right.
But either way, okay. Are we guys ready? Let's take a breath, reset.
I'm ready.
We're going to be talking about the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, and their interactions with colleges. Okay, with that, let's go live. Okay, give me 1 second. Hello. Welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of WIC TV, a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. Gang, we haven't even started it yet, and you guys are giving me subs and bits. Thank you so much. But let's introduce the topic. If you want to continue to like, subscribe, donate, by all means. But I'm going to get us off on the right foot by talking about what we're going to be discussing today. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be talking about a recent report released by The Intercept that detailed and alleges how the DHS, or the Department of Homeland Security, is using the threat of Hamas and other instigators on campuses in order to, what's the most neutral way to put it, be more involved with campus organizations, with the institution itself. We're going to talk about that. Like, is this a good thing? Is this government overreach, or is this a response to a very real threat? Is this something that the government should be involved in at all? Let's talk about it. I have a wonderful group of guests here to discuss it, and we'll give them some introductions and opening statements, and we'll see how it goes. And we're going to start with Cypher from Cypher Reports. Go ahead.
Hey everybody, Cypher here. I do a weekly show, no longer streaming, but you can catch me, Cypher Report, everywhere: TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, X, whatever the fuck you want to say. So that's what I do. I do weekly shows, political stuff. As far as this topic is concerned, in my opinion, I think that The Intercept is being kind of a little underhanded with how it's presenting what is happening, because of its ideological bias, as well as what it's kind of focused on right now, which is the Hamas and Israeli war. And I also think, like, just broadly speaking, other than the whole Intercept article itself, I don't think that this is necessarily a bad thing. We should be wary of whenever the government is trying to work with private institutions, especially when it comes to things around free speech. But as a base, it is not that concerning. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for being here. We'll get into it as we go. Next up, he's been on my show before, but it's been quite a bit. Aircraft Sparky, go ahead.
Yes, I'm Aircraft Sparky. I am a populist constitutionalist. I do 2 shows a week, one on Monday, one on Wednesday night, on youtube.com/Aircraft Sparky, and also Rumble. Yeah, looking at this, less government is better, always. The less intrusive the government is, the better off, more freedom that can exist. I think one of the most laughable things that comes out of this report is today's traditional undergraduate students generally are less resilient and able to handle conflict, more neurodiverse, and present more mental health challenges, such as anxiety, depression, and suicide ideation, than in any other generation. And if something like and I understand the Israel-Hamas thing is controversial to some people. I mean, look, the way of the world has always been war. As long as Jews have existed, they've been persecuted. The Palestinians, they claim that they're persecuted. I mean, cool, fine, whatever. I am solely on the Israeli side of this argument. But the fact that these people can't even stand to banter with each other before they mentally break down, I think that is more of a critique on the parenting of Gen X and some of the older millennials of today. Helicopter parenting has failed. It has made our children weak and unable to handle ideas that they don't agree with. Less government good, more government bad.
Okay, thanks. I'm sure we'll get into some of that as we go. Next up, Fabian Liberty Scott. Go ahead.
So I'm an anarcho-capitalist, Fabian Liberty. You can find me on Fabian Liberty pretty much everywhere. I quit streaming for about a year, actually 11 months to be exact. And I just started coming back to it. It's kind of fun. So you can catch me Wednesdays and then the occasional other days. You know, follow me on YouTube. You'll find me there. Twitch censorship just got to be too difficult and too afraid to like get banned and then never be able to be on another panel ever again. So it's better to just be on YouTube. Twitch sucks. That being said, in terms of the topic, you know, my initial reaction to the Intercept article was like, here we go again, you know, massive government overreach. Then I read the report. Anybody that's ever worked in government has written these reports before. It's a giant nothing burger because the report isn't actually what the DHS is doing. The report is what government does, which is a bunch of people that don't exist in private entities, don't have any actual competition, don't have to worry about prices or selling things. What they have to worry about is justifying their job by writing a bunch of bullshit reports where they come up and they're like, everything is going to burn if you don't give us money. And then Congress or whoever's in charge of them gives them like 10% of what they asked for. So I mean, that might be a surprising take to hear from an anarchist. You might think I would be like, fuck the DHS, let's get rid of the DHS. Yeah, the DHS is unjustifiable, fuck them. But nevertheless, it's kind of a nothing burger, but I do think that there's a more interesting meta conversation we will shift to, which is how government grows. Because this report is a perfect example, not of how there is like this evil cabal of like 10 Jewish bankers somewhere being like, we run the world, but really what it is it's stupidity and incompetence and like bloat and bureaucracy that creates this entanglement with corporations. So it becomes this giant kind of machine that just kind of works together and wastes more and more money and has more and more corruption and more problems as time goes on. And I think this is a perfect example of that.
Okay, we'll get into it as we go, I am sure. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate you. Last but certainly not least, Braden Hammer. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm Mr. Hammer on Twitch, and I would agree with what Cypher said, and I would take it even further. And this is not against Wick or anything, but the article you provided is basically a disguised opinion piece by the Intercept, and it really doesn't have any evidence for the title of the article. So they say that the DHS is sneakily infiltrating colleges to increase its own power. There's no references or articles or sources for any of that. Then it goes into actually source information about how the DHS is sending officers to college campuses to interact with campus police to enforce laws basically about anti-Semitic harassment and anti-Semitic hate crimes to make sure that those aren't happening. And that's really the bulk of what's happening. That's really the bulk of what the DHS is doing. I thought we'd be talking about like how the DHS is brainwashing students, which is obviously isn't. It's not really involving itself in the education of students at all. It's more, again, just interacting with the police. And I think that's really, there's no way to fight against that or have any problem with that. So that's my statement.
Okay, well, thank you for being here, and I'm sure we'll get into it. So with that, the floor is open, and you guys may begin. If you have troubles getting in, please raise your hand, and we'll see what
I've
we
got to
have.
ask, did anyone read? I'm pretty sure Fabian read the actual report that was published by the DHS. Cypher, Mr. Hammer, did y'all read the report?
Yes, the report that was requesting the DHS to make suggestions to college campuses in order to protect students and all that stuff. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Hammer.
Wait, I'm not sure if. Wait, was there a report attached to it?
Read this.
It was the
article.
link. In the article, there was a link to.
Yeah, there was a hyperlink to it.
Mr. Hammer,
see, I missed that
how
one.
can you say?
Sure,
how can you say that the article is lying about the report that you didn't read?
Okay, listen. Wait. Okay, let me just.
He's
What the
making
fuck are you
sure that
talking
he
about?
read it because when you do research about something like this, you're going to read like thousands of fucking things to actually read.
No, don't cope. Don't cope about it.
He
He just showed you the title cover of it, and you didn't recognize it. Like you
I mean,
didn't
I
read the
put it
report.
up today to read
You might have read
I
other
can-
articles calling out that article or other Twitch streamers, but don't sit here and bullshit and say that you know that something is like that
or you can give the man a
reporting
second
when you
to-
didn't.
or you can give him a
read it.
second.
Sure.
to
So
make
I
sure that he
looked
read
into.
it
I
or
looked.
didn't read it.
Yes, I looked into other articles referencing this. Okay, so I mean, I can like look at this. Does it say that? Does it?
So you
does it?
So you looked at
No,
you
I
read
read
other
it.
articles and then you went ahead
Okay.
and said. And you read other articles and said, I trust their opinion more, therefore Intercept bad. I kind of agree with you that Intercept is being hyperbolic and putting in their own opinion in here, but you didn't read the fucking report. So like, you're not prepared for the discussion.
In my defense, there wasn't like a list of sources. Okay, it was
There
just
was
like
a
random
blue link
links.
to said report in the
It's
Intercept.
it's highlight. It's a hyperlink in the second paragraph of the article sent to you. That's a different color. Like, come on, dude. Like, it's insulting to everybody else here that you didn't even read the report.
I think honestly you're like overplaying this just to like prove your point. I'm pretty sure because I did
What
my
point? I'm not
background
proving. I'm
research
just
on this.
the only point I'm proving is that you're.
I literally just I missed one link. Okay, I'm sorry. Like I did background research on this. I read into other articles and other sources on this. I've gone to the DHS website to do more research on this. Okay, yeah, I have done my background research. I missed one fucking report. Okay, bro, like.
Okay, we've established
Okay,
this.
so-
Let's move on. Let's keep going.
It really
Let's keep
doesn't
going.
matter.
Let's get into the discussion. Okay.
I want to hear. Okay, so what part of the report like disproves what I'm saying?
All 28 pages.
All 28
No, come
pages.
on, that's
a little
not
bit,
true.
a little bit more
it's-
specific about that.
It's just the way you talked about it. You talked about it so vaguely that it was obvious that you didn't read the report. Okay, look, the report by itself is benign. Really, all it does is it's making suggestions of how to how to interject federal government into these educational institutions on a permanent
No,
basis.
that's not true either, because the federal government's already there working with these with these institutions. It's not injecting
Not in
it
the way that they're
more.
suggesting now.
Yes, it is. The DHS has always, since the DHS was established, it was established in order to help state and local governments, private organizations, etc., be able to understand the information sphere, the terrorist threat, etc., in order to protect American citizens from various things. Now you can say that you can say that's bullshit. You can say that's bullshit. Yeah, communicate with them and like have different liaisons on the state level. You can say that it's bullshit that they shouldn't do that, but this has been a thing that the DHS has done since its inception, shortly after 9/11.
I do think that it is interesting that right off the bat in the letter to the secretary, they immediately identify how the biggest source of the problems happens to be social media and the social contagion that surrounds misinformation put forward.
Yep.
So I think that's an interesting conversation to have. The problem is the U.S. government is one of the biggest purveyors of misinformation in the freaking world. Me and Fabian went halfway across the world to go fight wars that were literally.
Well, I was in the military too, so it doesn't matter. I think there's only one person on this
I'm not a
panel
combat
that's not a veteran.
Yeah, I didn't. I
thought you were.
Either.
I thought you
my
were.
co-host,
you don't need to be.
Mark is a combat veteran, but no, I just gave vaccines and shit, man.
You don't need to be a combat veteran to have joined the military. Anyways, it doesn't matter.
No. I just wanted to make it clear that like that I wasn't like stolen valor
gotcha.
up in here via him.
Sure. Right.
I just think it's weird that the government who claimed that there was all these big
let's set that as
biological weapons across the seas, they send all the people over there. Our government lies to us on the daily. You should never trust.
Set that aside for right now, for a second. Is there anything wrong with the government informing private institutions, informing other local governments and organizations of the threat assessment or any other information that the government has? Is there anything inherently wrong with that aspect?
Considering the track record of the U.S. government and their
No, that's not what I'm asking. You're injecting more of this. I'm asking as a basic function of government, set aside if the government sucks, right? As a basic function of government, is there anything wrong with the government informing people of its own assessments?
Yes, when they give misinformation, yes.
Okay. But that's a qualifier.
Hold on.
That would be a no.
I'm curious if Scott has the same opinion.
Well, obviously, I don't have the same opinion, right? Like he's not like he knows I'm an anarchist. Like I don't think the Department of Homeland. Here's what we should do with the Department of Homeland Security. We should find like the 3 things they're doing that are like maybe important, and have the FBI do them in like 1 or 2 months, and then deputize every single fucking DHS agent to go give them a fucking bottle of suntan lotion, a fucking hat, and put them on the southern border. Like that's what I would do.
Yeah, dig it.
Okay. But you wouldn't.
We don't need them.
Say that there's. You wouldn't say. Okay. Aside from that, do you think the government is one of its functions should inform people, whether it's private organizations, colleges, etc., all their local governments, of its assessment that it's making?
I think the government should be abolished. When you say should, like again, this is why I didn't it's why I didn't speak up. Like Wick was like, I wonder what Scott thinks, but I'm an anarchist, right? Like fuck the government, fuck the state, fuck these lying sacks of shit that steal from us, destroy our lives, and ruin fucking everything that they goddamn touch. But I'm willing to set all of that aside to have a pragmatic discussion about what is in the report and how government functions, and have a conversation that you guys want to have.
Sure, I'm curious. Okay. I'm sorry. Just to like. So I'm just reading the beginning of this. Does it say anything that disagrees with anything that I've said, at all?
I think you should let this
like
point
specific,
go.
like a specific thing.
Okay, we're gonna
like a specific thing in this report.
We get it. We're gonna drop it for now, and we're gonna move on. Right. We're gonna keep going. I understand, right, that you don't like the government, Scott. I get that. I understand.
Well, you pulled me in. That's what I was just saying.
Yeah. In the context, right, as you said, of setting that aside to discuss how the government operates today in the United States, right? To Cypher's question.
All right. So to put on my pragmatist consequentialist cap, right? My only problem with this, right? Assuming, let's say that they actually got everything that they wanted, because I stated in my opening statement that when you read these reports, you have to recognize that this is an ask by the DHS. This is not like a policy of what the DHS is doing. This is like the DHS basically saying, you know, these are the things that we think justify us keeping our fucking budget, right? So I have to make up shit that allows me to keep my budget. I have to make up shit that allows me to keep my job. So assuming all of those things are granted, what I think this is an increase in scope. Maybe not, I wouldn't say scope, an increase in size, right? So the scope seems to be relatively similar, right? It doesn't seem like they're, in this report, they're asking for any additional responsibilities or additional power over new things. But what it does seem to do, and there is this kind of trend in government in general with these institutions, is just a kind of general growth of the bureaucracy. And the more there are layers, right? Kind of like from a Weber's perspective, right? You know, what is it? Is it the Peter principle, right? Like people rise to the level of their own incompetence. Like it's just this increasing, it's the increasing layers of like middle management and all these things. Like under the Donald Trump administration, for example, like the CISA came out, and then CISA like was all involved in social media. It's like, is that really an additional new task? I mean, it kind of is and it kind of isn't, but like things that used to be small, they keep wanting to expand, and then it becomes this kind of incestuous relationship where DHS and all of these federal agents are like connected with like all of these different organizations to be tasked with what? And the question, the justification here is there's this potential threat of violence or like protest or things because of what's happening in the Middle East. And all of the fucking data shows over and over again throughout like the last 30 years that every form of crime, hate crime, rapes, sexual assaults, murders, robberies, are some of the lowest in the world on university campuses. It's fucking social media bullshit trying to pretend like there's this grave danger because every now and then someone's like, I saw a swastika, and every news agency has to fucking talk about it. And it's stupid. Like there's just no justification for it.
But point of clarity, where in this they are asking for more people? Because I didn't read that.
They're asking,
like
so there is.
For point of clarity, further clarity, I did see in here when I was reading it that there was the request for somebody to be assigned, but that's not
they want to
necessarily
open offices on the campuses and things like that is really the.
So there's that, and
I'm sorry, I was still talking. I didn't hear you.
There was some open offices, I believe, but recommendation number, where is it? Build trusting environment that encourages, you know, I don't know what that means, but that almost certainly means additional representatives, additional monies, right? So recommendation number 3 almost certainly means we need more resources, so there's more reporting, so there's more connection between students and resource, right? So that's kind of that almost entails a growth. And then there is
the interaction between
recommendation number 5. I don't know, because it depends on how recommendation number 5 is used. Because earmark congressional funds could just be like one dude, right? How those funds are disseminated or how those funds are done, like that could be a growth, or it could like not be much of a growth, right? It just kind of depends on how the actual structure would be done. But
when
yeah,
you say number 5, you just mean down the list of points, right? So the bullet point 5. Just making sure I'm reading.
Well, it says recommendation number 5 and in on a page 19 of the PDF.
Oh, I see.
Of the Homeland Security.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they also talk about developing toolkits for different organizations and stuff like that, which is going to make them want to increase for personnel and just little things
there's nothing in there that says like hire 10,000 people, right? But it's all of these things that would require funds, people, etc.
No, that's fair. I was just making sure that I wasn't misunderstanding you, so we're good.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You had something to say, Sparky? If not,
well, it's just one thing that I find interesting in this is they keep on talking about they want to talk about freedom of speech, which is a great thing. I'm all for it. Talk about academic freedom, that's a great thing. But then they want to interject DEI, which is counterintuitive to both academic freedom and freedom of speech.
It's just acknowledging that DEI offices exist in order to meet these students' needs here, and at most times, not at most times, but a lot of instances of it not meeting those students' needs, either because the DEI representative in question just doesn't know enough, because there's a bunch of different kind of social groups that exist, or just not necessarily resourced properly to meet every
I mean,
student's needs.
they're kind of asking for additional training, right? So they're asking for more
Yeah.
money for DEI initiatives and programs, right? So
But
on
DEI
page
is
20, working from the White House recommendation to, quote, incorporate information about anti-Semitism into federal diversity, equity, inclusion, and
Okay, gotcha.
accessibility
Yeah.
training programs. So like they're demanding money for Marxist programs to indoctrinate their
I mean,
own
no,
federal agents.
DEI is not
right?
not necessarily Marxist.
I mean,
You
is
can
it
be a-
not
you can
based
be a
in
basic
critical
bitch.
race theory?
You can be a basic bitch liberal, not believe in anything of the Marxist ideology whatsoever, and still be like, hey, I think it's okay. I think it's pretty good to have somebody that's representative of a group be able to explain what this means in their context.
You don't get to decouple DEI, which is the
Sure you
praxis
do,
of
but this
critical
isn't
race
the
theory,
debate.
by saying that like liberals, like, well, I mean, Spark brought it up, so I'm just saying it's not just like, oh, acknowledge. You said your first point was it's just acknowledging these programs exist, and then I say, hey, on page 20, they're asking for more training and more money, so that directly refutes what you said, and then
Sure,
you're like,
sure.
oh, well,
I'm
that's
not
not really a big deal. I'm like, well, it kind of is.
That's not what
if
I
you're
said.
against
I
that
said
shit.
I said that it's not necessarily Marxist. Please listen to what I actually said. So these concepts
Well, yeah, no,
are not
that is
necessarily
just-
Marxist. But this
that's what you
isn't
said.
this isn't the debate. So
Yeah, I do
No, you
want
said
to
it wasn't
kind
that
of
big of a deal, and then you
refocus.
said it wasn't Marxist. It
I
is,
do want to
obviously.
kind of refocus the conversation, if I may. So the basic concept here of the government being involved with colleges and being working with colleges to do all sorts of things, whether it be something as simple as passing on information from threat levels, threat assessments, etc., to as at least the article, and maybe not the report itself, but the article alluded to, um, changing curriculum or at least affecting curriculum. Do we think that this is something the government should have a place in, right? Just as a concept, right? Should the government come into a college campus and be involved, and to what extent should they be involved? Go ahead.
No,
I think
I think it's antithetical to an academic program to have to succumb to propaganda, and a lot of things that government does is develop propaganda. I just don't buy into it. Anytime the government gets involved, they start taking names, they start making lists of things, and they even mention things such as activists and stuff on campus, keeping eyes on them. Okay, when I went to the University of Oklahoma, we had some large activists there who did a lot of stuff for the indigenous, and they were good people. They were loud, they were noisy, and their protests were messy. But if you're keeping track of these activists, you know, it's kind of like the whole idea with gun registries and stuff. The last thing you want is the government to have more information on you, to be tracking you and things like that, unless you're doing something subversive, something actually illegal. And by the way, having
how is the
bad
government
opinions, having
how
bad
is the
opinions
government
of other
supposed to know
people
the
is not
difference?
illegal.
How is the government supposed to know the difference between an activist and somebody that's planning a terrorist attack?
You wait till they do something. That's why we have a reactive
You
police
wait until
force.
they do something?
You wait.
Yes.
Wait. You don't
Okay.
think there should be any form of preventative, like law enforcement?
Every
Like
time there's been a
investigations?
mass shooter, the FBI has always come out and said, say the line, we had him on our radar, and they did nothing. It's because we have a reactive police force, not a proactive.
The
Wait,
reason why
do
they
you have
didn't
do
do
you have
anything is because of the fact that we have civil
do.
rights still.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I do want to pass the ball to Hammer for a minute. He was trying to get in here, and I want to
Sure,
give him
sorry.
a little space.
True.
Go ahead. Hammer.
I think first of all, you say that like, well, every mass shooting they didn't catch him, they didn't preemptively stop him, but of course there's going to be people who slip. But like, do you have the statistics on how many terrorist attacks have been prevented? The answer isn't zero. Number one, and number two, I'll just give my take on should government be involved on college campuses. Yes, I think that to a limited extent, any interest group should have an opportunity to talk to students. The government has its own interests, it has its own perspective. It should have the opportunity to like reach students. If it's enforcing curriculum, telling them what they can and can't say, like holistically, obviously that's wrong. But
Hold on,
like,
do you believe the
having
government
meetings-
has rights?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, the government has no rights. Only the people have rights.
What? So you think the
Like-
government is just like another interest group that has the monopoly on power and violence, but an interest group that has a right for its voice to be heard on college campuses?
Yeah, the government has a right to have its voice
Okay,
heard.
all
I don't
right,
think
all
that's
right. That's
insane. Like
It's
if,
insane.
Like if yeah, like if like I mean that does sound crazy if you're like anti-government, but like let's say the FBI
Like half the
there's a
country at
murder.
this point.
Say there's a murder, right? And the FBI wants to investigate. Do they have the right to investigate?
It's a federal crime. Yes, they have the right to investigate.
Okay, so the
crime.
government in certain cases does have rights, right?
They don't. No.
That's not a right of the government. That's a theft that has been
That's
stolen
their
from you.
task.
They
Yes.
stole from me the right to investigate murders. They stole from me the right to defend myself. They
Yes,
stole from
and
me
there's a
the
reason
right
for
to
that.
read
Can we
the
not
basic
get on
words.
this
in an
libertarian
anarchist
argument
society,
for the love
but
of
we
God?
don't. So we live in a government. We live in a democracy, and in that democracy, we have a government, and the government.
I get it. We live in a
allow
society.
The
Awesome. You
population.
did the meme.
We live in a population that allows this government to do what it has to do because we like our government, because we live in a democracy.
No.
And we voted
Listen,
our
listen. No,
democracy.
you're full of
Most
shit.
people
You're full of
aren't
shit.
Anarchists.
We live. Listen, you don't have to be an anarchist, right? You just have to be like anyone in the last 100 years, and then up until like 20 years ago, and then only the Republicans and anarchists and libertarians and non-crazy left liberals today to know that like the government is something that is dangerous if it gets too powerful, and in every way, shape, or form, we should limit its scope and power, except for those things that are totally and very deeply necessary, right? Like as an anarchist, yeah, I say fuck the government completely, but almost anyone throughout history, American history, except for magically the big, massive government fucking neocon Democrats today, think that the government has like some right for its voice to be heard on college campuses. No, it doesn't. The only thing the government has a right to do, even under our constitutional republic, is be voted on and be fired or replaced if they're not good enough. Like that's its goal.
My point. Okay, sorry. I'll let you talk, Cypher.
No, that's fine. Go for it.
Okay, the reason that I say that the government has a right as like an interest group, I think that colleges are probably best when different groups of people speak to them. Like I think college is the perfect place for different people, like even corporations or even like activist groups, like to come and talk to them so that you can actually hear from like different groups of people what they have to say. And I think that government is one of those people. Would you like lose your fucking mind if a mailman went to a college and talked about how important the postal service is?
But that isn't what is even discussed even remotely.
We're talking about rights,
because the postal service, a postal worker is an employee of the government.
You think this is a
on
dunk?
behalf of the
You're being
government.
silly. You're being silly.
I'm not being silly. I'm
You're saying that
serious.
the government, you've changed the goalpost from the government has a right to have its voice heard, and you did this as a Mott and Bailey situation where the entire conversation is not about whether or not the government has the right to walk onto the quad and preach to students about how the Department of Homeland Security needs good funding, so you should vote for this Democrat. But instead, we're talking about whether or not they have the authority to have certain agents, whether or not they have the authority or the right, as you put it, to implant with our tax dollars individuals that are facilitating communication, that are tracking people, that are tracking protest groups, that are taking their metadata so that they can make sure that these protesters, like this is a totally different thing. I know, but this is the Mott and Bailey.
Tracking. Okay,
no. That's why it's fallacious.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to interject because we're hitting all around the point, but I want to address something that Fabian just brought up, like the idea, right, of the government or a governmental agency keeping tabs on protesters on campus, right? Is this something that is a needful thing? Again, we have people who are very concerned about some of the rhetoric that are given, especially by the pro-Palestine side on things. Just this week in the Atlantic, they talked about one of the activists talking about how the president being executed would be something they were for, right? Like for war crimes and things like that. Does the government not have? Does the government not have an interest in keeping tabs and at least looking into those people to think, well, hey, is this person just spouting off, or is this a credible threat? Like, this is a question, right? And this is where I think that the crux of the issue is to protect its citizens. does the government have the right or the ability, or should it have the ability, to use a better phrase, to look into threats? And are these protesters potential threats? That's the question. Go ahead.
To answer the actual question that's being proposed, the entire reason government exists is because we as a society, fucking way long ago, decided that it was better to have an institution that had the monopoly of violence to prevent blood feuds and all other manner of stuff in order to create a more orderly society and organize people. One of the obligations that government has from this is the duty to protect citizens, protect people from violence, because it has the monopoly of violence. And when it runs afoul of that duty, when it uses its power incorrectly, then it loses its moral authority to do anything. But at the same time, when a government fails to protect its citizens from known threats or people from known threats, it also loses its whatever I said before previously, it's moral justification authority for its existence.
Does government actually have a moral authority? I reject that notion altogether.
Philosophically, yes, that's the whole idea. And whether you want to say this government has any moral authority or not is a separate question from government having moral authority at all from a philosophical standpoint. So we can abstracted from the United States or Canada or China or any other government that might exist.
I'd say any government. I don't think any government has moral authority, because as a citizen of America, the government is supposed to be by and for the people.
Yes,
okay.
That's what gives it its moral authority to use.
No, the people are the moral authority, not the government.
I think we're just talking past each other, but that's fine. I'm
sure.
not
Okay.
About
do you think that like the government should we should have the government like do law enforcement?
No.
Right?
No.
whatever the second half of that question is. No.
State and local is the only law enforcement that should exist.
Yeah, you want to go back to Confederacy.
Well, that's a part of the government, right?
But that's still government.
It's actually
still government.
It's less of a government.
We're not. I'm not talking about federal. I'm talking about government in general as an idea, not federal. Could be a monarchy.
Why are we having this meta conversation? Because like you're gonna
because it's
force me
important to
just
understand. It's important to do this in order to understand where our disagreements actually lie. So if the government, as it exists in general as a idea, has moral obligations in order to protect people from violence, then we can talk about, okay, how do we properly go about doing that? And that's where this debate actually can flourish, is on that. But if we don't agree that the government has a moral obligation, moral authority to protect its citizens from danger, then we're not going to agree on anything, and there's no point to continue.
So how do you define from danger? Because the idea like
you must agree with me or else we can't speak about it.
Yeah.
Well, if the government can't do anything, then like if
I have framed the question this way, and you must agree with me. If you don't agree with me, then we can't say.
It's not what I did.
No,
Come on.
No,
man.
I mean the question is like, does the government have like moral authority to like investigate and prevent crime? And your answer is, well, the government can't do anything, right? And then it's like, okay, well,
I mean,
I'm really trying to ask this like 20 different ways, and you guys just keep going onto this meta. I don't understand.
For whatever fucking reason, the ANCAP here is the only one not doing a meta conversation about whether or not government should exist. Like, what the fuck is wrong with it?
So wait, what is your argument against like specifically about government like investigating protesters?
So
I have no problem doing an internal critique for the means of having a conversation. I have no problem adopting your philosophical worldview of consequentialism, utilitarianism, and or a constitutional republic to make a constitutional argument or a utilitarian argument against these things so that we can have this conversation. But if you just want to talk about the philosophical roots of whether or not government ought to exist, I'll fucking sit here and preach ANCAP philosophy all day and bury you guys.
I'm not talking about it.
Wait, I'm trying to ask the direct question that Wick is asking.
So
I don't know if you are. Look again. Let me try one more time. They're alleging that the allegation is that the DHS is trying to expand its reach and its influence so that it can potentially track and investigate potential threats within college campuses. My question is, do we want the DHS to be involved in doing that? Why or why not? And that is the question. And we don't have to get Should government exist about this? We don't. Please. Oh my God.
No.
I don't.
So
I don't.
I'll answer very directly. No, because every time the government puts people on a list, they harass these individuals. They do all kinds of bad things to them. People get put on no-fly lists for saying the wrong thing with no credible anything behind it. It is ridiculous. We have a reactionary police force. They should act as a reactionary police force. We should not have the minority report going on.
So then the government has no
I wanna
obligation
does
to
Fabian have the
actively
same answer?
protect its people.
Wait, Fabian was.
Oh no!
like,
Before you ask Fabian whether he has the same answer, I want to hear what Cypher just said. I couldn't because you guys were talking at the same time. Repeat what you just said, please, Cypher. Go ahead.
Yeah. So if the so what Aircraft Sparky was saying is that he believes that the government, anytime the government puts anybody on a list, they harass people, and therefore the government is bad when it does these things, right? Because it's a react, and then on top of that, the government should only have a reactive police force, and which means that it can only go and find out when somebody committed a crime and then try to hold them account for it. If that is the question, then the government, the DHS, does not have any responsibility to prevent a terrorist attack from happening. So it becomes, that's where the rub is. So for me, the government has a moral obligation in order to protect its citizens. As such, the government has the ability, should have the ability to investigate any various claims, whether it's this person is a terrorist, whether this person is engaged in malinformation, foreign malign information, whether it's propaganda, etc. And the government needs to be able to do these things in order to suss out credible threats from non-credible threats. That's the right word.
There you go. Response.
Yeah, so I would say a few things. So first and foremost, I would say it's important to recognize that this moral obligation, this moral duty that the state has to enforce protection, right? To be preemptive in some regard, right? To prevent or preventative, right? A deterrent, whatever, however you want to put it. I don't really know where, like, we could talk about like where you believe that comes from, and that's fine, and I'm okay with you accepting that you do indeed believe that. But from a legal perspective, that has been shot down in the Supreme Court multiple times, right? Police officers, state agencies, etc., do not have any duty or obligation to stop crime or to stop anything. Plenty of people have been charged, right, or have been sued because they didn't intervene, and over again, courts have found that a cop is allowed to be like, nope, I'm scared, so I let that woman get beat to death.
So
right.
The rub for that is that the Supreme Court is looking at individual cases and not whether or not the government has an obligation itself, right? So if you do not have you as an individual do not have the obligation to prevent the harm or of another person. So they took that to the individual police officer, saying, "Hey, you don't have a duty to go rescue that person or get in the line of fire. You don't have
the pattern
the duty."
Is the opposite. The pattern is in the opposite direction, right? Because there is known specific imminent danger at an individual level, and at larger governmental organizations, what you were talking about is potential threats that you could never stop, all of, right?
Yeah. So, but the issue is that the Supreme Court is saying, as an individual officer, you don't have to risk your own life to try to save someone else's life because they're putting the individual on a pedestal. So I'm saying, so it's not that
I'm saying the pattern is in the opposite direction.
But that doesn't make the government itself lose that responsibility.
Okay,
Anytime we have
hear me
kind
out.
of
What you're saying makes no sense if you actually like break it down, right? Because when you say the government has a responsibility to stop terrorist attacks, right?
Sure.
They don't. They have, at least in your, like, even by your own logic, that's obviously not true. Like, what you mean to say is that the government has some responsibility to use some portion of our tax-paying dollars to be as effective as possible in trying to stop some level of terrorist attacks. And that is to be determined based off of our votes, what percentage of money we're allowed to have taken away to what percentage of crime we want reduced, right?
That's fine. I
That's
don't want to
one way to say
argue
it.
over that thing. I don't want to argue.
It's a
over
weird way to say it, but it's a
semantics.
correct way
Yeah,
to say
I got you.
it, right?
No, I got you.
Sure,
I,
but
I'm not
like,
gonna
I don't
argue
think
with
you're
it. That's fine.
necessarily disagreeing with him. So yeah, they're like even if so we would, I guess you could even say like we would expect the government to do this. Like why, like we would want them to, right, as voters. So even if they're like not absolutely
no
forced to technically, then like we like be in, like generally the population would be in favor of them investigating terrorist attacks.
Right,
now.
right. But hold on, let me explain, because you both seem confused by this. The reason that it's important for me to point this out, instead of just saying it's their job to stop it, but that there is a negotiation between the quote unquote the concept of the will of the people, the moral authority that you're referencing, right? It's kind of this Rousseauian kind of like social contract theory, right? That there is a kind of like that people are supportive of the state using their money that they make at their job to protect them from terrorist attacks. And so there's a negotiation about the efficiency of that. And so when you have a bloated government organization that's wasting money on college kids that they have no actual evidence that they're a legitimate threat, right? That's when the negotiation comes into, are you wasting my money, and are you becoming a tyrannical organization that's looking into everything as opposed to doing your fucking job?
Sure. And when it comes to the particular protests that are happening on college campuses right now, there have been credible threats of violence against both sides, against Muslims and Jews at different things. And so
there's like fucking 2 murders
this.
a day in Chicago, right? Credible threats of violence, I don't think is a great fucking metric to fucking measure how much federal agencies should be involved in fucking policing and spying on college kids. Like,
yeah, but I mean,
it's silly.
But like, if we're going by like support of the like voters, then I'm guessing that the people in Chicago who are getting murdered probably aren't in support of the government coming in to help them and investigate.
And
like,
most of them are.
who murdering
Almost
them.
all of them are, including the black population, are super pro police in those areas where they keep dying.
You
They
didn't
want
let him
people to
finish.
come
He
in and
was getting
fix
there.
this.
Not generally not the people who are dying, but like in terms of the colleges, I mean the students.
No,
in
they're looking for
college are
EMS
hyper-
because they're dying.
Oh
Okay.
God.
I'm
$2
pretty
from
sure.
Physical Johnson.
Okay.
To say
What's
big hammer W, bigger Fabio L. Thank you for the $2.
Thank you.
Just on a basic level, and this is to Sparky and Fabian first, and then I'm curious. Do you think that, right, and set aside the anarchism for just a moment, right? The government,
I
as it
have been
exists
this
now,
whole time.
I know, as it exists now, should the government be looking into credible terrorist threats? Like, say they get a notice that there's a group of individuals that are being funded by Qatar that may have some have said some nefarious things about different, like the Holocaust Museum or something. Do you think that the government should at least investigate that? Yes or no?
Yeah,
Well,
obviously.
investigating Al Jazeera is always a good thing. So,
Okay,
yeah.
so that being said, right? Again, the allegation is that there are foreign governments pouring money into groups that are active on campuses that, again, have rhetoric and engage in activities that might pose a harm to different institutions, groups, and other things like that. So if you were against the DHS, right, but if you're for the investigation, why are you against the DHS being involved in the campus? Like,
So it's very simple. It's very simple, right? So when do I have the right to defend myself? Do I have and it's an important question, right? Like, so in an altercation between two individuals, right? I have a right to defend myself when they punch me, right? When they start fighting me, when they start acting, right? But there's another point where I have a right to defend myself too, right? Which is, let's say person A and person B, right? I'm person A. Person B has a gun. They pull the gun out of the holster. They brandish the firearm, they point it at me, and they put their finger in the trigger well. They have communicated to me the intent to commit violence, right? And so I can defend myself from that imminent threat, that imminent harm, because there's a communication of that harm. And so it is in these positions where the government ought, until such a time that, we can regain our rights back, the government ought find information that is a communication of an intent to commit harm. So assuming the Governor Whitmer plot, for example, wasn't completely created by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the FBI didn't try and use all their funds to kidnap a governor, right? Assuming that they didn't do that, when someone buys the van and they buy the bomb materials, right, and then they come up with a plan. Well, it's like, okay, well, the buying of the bomb materials, the buying of the van, the buying of the fertilizer, all of these things are a communication for the specific act that they're talking about. And so it's no different than pointing a gun at me. But when you say, oh, you got funding from a group that is bad to protest against a war, I think what I'm far more likely to assume in that situation is that the government has been doing what it's been doing since the hippie movement, which is utilizing federal power to try and stymie, slow down, and otherwise, censure the speech of those that go against the military prison and industrial complex.
And look, we've even seen recently here domestically how even our own court system has been used against political candidates that did not agree with the establishment thoughts. So think what you will, but our government is corrupt, and why should we give them more power to spread their corruption, to push their propaganda and everything else?
People are corrupt. Why give people more power?
Okay, so your issue is that they're like going after people who aren't like literally buying like firearms or buying weapons and stuff, right? So you think that's an overreach?
Yes.
I was asked the scope, and I gave the scope, which is when I think it is important for the state to track communications, not private communications, but communications that come from outside of the U.S. into the U.S., right? Things that they can publicly gain, right? And when they find things that communicate a threat, then they can investigate that threat. I don't think what they ought to be doing, I don't think they ought to be wiretapping people or fucking doing without, right? Like, I think we obviously don't want, I think most of us don't want the state doing that. I think most of us don't want us tracking for our own safety every communication that we have. But I mean, maybe not, because Edward Snowden kind of proved that the government was already doing that and nobody went to jail. So we kind of have to assume that they're still doing that.
Snowden was a hero.
Wait, so just a point of clarification. So if someone let's say someone says, "Oh, I'm pro Hamas all the way, 100% pro Hamas. I think they're doing a great thing," and the DHS, this is just clarification, and the DHS decided to investigate their house or look into their,
that'd be wrong.
Look into them.
Where's the line?
Fucked up.
Where's the line? So if
when you say I'm pro Hamas, right? You're not. I already gave the line. The communication towards the desire, intent, or the plan to commit violence. That's
so you're okay with a person. So are you okay then with the example that Wick gave earlier, or I think it was Wick gave earlier, that a person on campus was like, I would love to see Biden get the rope.
I think that's incredibly important that we preserve people's right to do that. And I think those very sentiments, those very speeches are why this country exists in the first place.
So
we weren't afraid to tar and feather politicians.
Sure. Wishing death on somebody is a bit different than being like, hey, they should go away. But there's no
one's an act, one's just a wish.
There's no reason to investigate further.
I think if you want to use your resources to investigate someone's publicly available information because you find that's efficacious, go ahead and do it. But there's no reason to get a wiretap for them. There's no reason to get a warrant for anything.
I think we can have some agreement there.
I mean, if I see that, right, I don't have a huge, it's not my big fight that some DHS officials let's check out the rest of their Twitter. You know what I mean? I don't think that's a big fucking ask.
So then if you, I'm not saying this person did it because I don't know anything about this. Just know what.
This is a hypothetical person at this point.
Yeah. So we go down the rabbit hole, and then it turns out, hey, they've been retweeting, Hamas and death to Jews, and there was a person that they celebrated that shot up a synagogue, and then they're like, oh, I wish I could do that. Does that cross the line?
I don't think so.
No, it doesn't. I mean, that's why so many mass shooters are on. It's kind of what Spark said earlier. There's a lot of mass shooters that are on the FBI's radar. because they're looking
until
for something
until
that's-
there's some action, they can't really. The FBI
Right.
can't.
We don't want
Sure.
it
What
because
if-
the problem with that hypothetical, right, is that hypothetical is basically what you're really asking is, ought the government have the right to wiretap and do warrantless searches and completely violate the Fourth
I didn't.
Amendment?
No, who's
Like,
no one said warrantless.
Well, hold on.
Yeah,
Well,
what
I mean, okay. Well, you get a warrant based off of no justification, whatever. Like,
I
it would be a
mean, is it
violation
not
of the Fourth
just
But that's
Amendment.
the argument, isn't it?
No, but the argument, listen to me. The argument is that you believe without any calls, without any suspicion of a crime being committed, right? And I'm not saying you believe this, just the hypothetical sets this up, is ought we, with no suspicion of a crime being committed, and with no indication that they're claiming or that they're saying that they're going to commit a crime, ought we be able to suspend their Fourth Amendment rights? And the problem with that is you can set up a scenario where it sounds intuitively really good, right? Like, this person sounds cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and everyone's kind of like, yeah, maybe we should check out if their fucking apartment is crazy, right? But then the other thing is that when that gets turned on its head, when the state is given that power, all of a sudden the state doesn't use it for your crazy hypothetical. They use it on, I don't know, Malcolm X.
I mean,
$5.
Malcolm X was part of a terrorist group. Sorry.
No, it's okay. $5 from Crazy Chicken 132. 21-foot rule is good enough for the cops to deal with aggressors. Deal and aggressors are in quotation marks. On a first strike basis, not good enough for citizens. Thank you for the $5. Did you? I cut you off, Hammer. So I'll let you go first. Then I have another question.
Sure. So wait. So I think my main disagreement is the idea that, like, again, like, being a part of like an extremist group doesn't like provide reasonable evidence that you can, like, that you're going to commit a crime. I think it does. I think that, like, if you're saying I love Hamas, I love when they like murder
Can you define just real quick for me, just so I'm clear?
Being a part of a group, yeah, what do you mean?
What's an extremist group in your mind?
Extremist group, like so I would say
Because the
that
government,
if
for the record,
you're-
currently says I'm in an extremist group, right? Like the current terrorist threat things say that by being an ANCAP, I'm in an. They specifically mention sovereign citizens, ANCAPs, libertarians as examples of far right extremist groups, despite the fact that I am nothing in common with the far right. So again, definitions here matter. It's really important. This is why it's scary.
Sure,
that You're willing to
Are
suspend
you
the
in a
Fourth
militia?
Amendment.
I would say I would say a literal
comment.
admission. I would say a literal admission, like you've been accepted into a terrorist group, or like a strong desire to be like aligned with them if they're a different part of the group, like Hamas. And I would say a terrorist group is anyone who's like who's committed acts of violence for political aims and is not a government.
Okay,
yeah, but I think there's a big difference between like a college kid that's 19 years old, right? That, has nothing but a bunch of woke professors and loves to tweet out hashtag Free Palestine, right? Saying she supports Hamas, right? And then like a 26-year-old with no documents that just came across the southern border that is actually like a card-carrying member of Hamas, right? Like, just because he hasn't communicated he's going to kill people, but he has communicated he's actually in the fucking group, right? And is like been trained by them. These are wildly different things, right? So like giving support for terror.
Would
like,
you be okay with
fuck that
wiretapping
person,
that gentleman? But the gentleman in your scenario, the 26 and the 26.
Yeah, because I think that's a
man.
communication, right? Like if you're in a group and they
So
have like a
certain
platform
extremist group.
that says, well, no, if
Right.
the platform specifically says that their desire is to, like, if your platform says, oh, I don't know, like one day the rocks will call out and say there is a Jew hiding behind me. Oh, Muslim, please come and kill the Jew. Like if you have like that much violence in your platform, you say that you're going to kill the Jews and you're in the kill the Jews group, like fucking, then like maybe we should look into you when you're in
Fair
that
enough.
group.
I think
So-
that Fabi and I are actually kind of in agreement here. I just hope that
Yeah, I
it
think-
remains consistent.
There is so what I'm hearing at least is there is a line where you would be like, okay, yeah, we do need to monitor that guy.
It's communication. That's my principle. My principle is you're communicating, just like the gun is communicating. When you say I support this people because they're freedom fighters and this is what decolonization looks like, you're a woke fucking retard. You're not a member of Hamas, right? But if you're like an active person in a sleeper cell, but you actually haven't committed any crimes, you being a part of that group and working towards that group's aims here in the United States is, as far as I'm concerned, communication of your desire and your intent to commit some form of terrorist attack in the near future.
But given that we don't have a list, at least that I'm aware of all the members of all the terrorist groups that ever existed, there might be some tells or signifiers within people that say, hey, this person, like, I don't know if you guys remember the... was it the Afghanistan war or the Iraq war, where there was an American citizen who went over.
There's been so many.
Right.
Yeah.
There's an American citizen who went over.
ISIS and
fought,
everything.
and fought with ISIS.
But that's one of those communications that Fabian is
right.
basically calling out to. We're talking about actual action. The difference between an ideologue screeching something at the top of their fucking lungs into the void is a lot different than them committing themselves to actually doing something.
Right.
We're not fascist. Like fascist states start killing people because they support groups and they say they're parts of things and they only spread ideology.
There is at some point a line where that investigation starts.
Yes,
and that communication for the express.
But I'm
desire.
sure we disagree on what that communication is to start the investigation.
Can I ask
but
you,
already,
Cypher? Can I ask you, Cypher, not to cut you off, but I'm asking you the question so you can just continue if you need. Where's the line for you? At what point, because you've been in agreement a little bit with Fabian and Aircraft Sparky there about, like, we shouldn't be just wiretapping protesters.
Yeah.
And fair enough. Yeah, true. But, like, at what point in your mind do you think, okay, this is a little, to use Fabian's language here, when has the person or individual communicated enough that okay, this might be an actual threat and we need to look into it?
Sure. So I think when the government starts to look into things when it's public, I think Fabian and Liberty and I agree on this, is that if it's public, it's fine. It doesn't fucking matter, right?
Yeah, I don't
the
give a
government
fuck.
has a right
You're dumb enough to post it on Twitter.
Create a list from that, right? If during that investigation into their public stuff, there are repeated calls for violence, repeated things of,
when
like,
you say
hey,
calls for violence, what do you mean?
Somebody should I wish somebody would go kill somebody right now, or I can't wait until we rise up and all the X group is dead. Long live the day of the rope kind of stuff.
Real quick, are you in favor of the state wiretapping and investigating basically every Marxist, Leninist, and communist in
Not
Twitter?
a Marxist, Leninist, so yes. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I'm just curious. I'm just curious because what you communicated would apply to basically all of them, right?
Yeah, I'm fine. You're
fine with the DHS hiring like a couple 100,000 people to go through all of these people's lives and personal communications.
It's not. There's going to be a give and take on this. But when there's enough repeated calls for violence, and then there's like some other thing, like, oh, it seems like they're hanging out with this group of people over here, and we know that group of people is kind of sussy.
So Hamas hobby, he should be on a terror watch list.
It should probably match like trends of like violence and hate crimes.
Okay, I want to hear what's fair enough, but I want to hear what Sparky just said.
Should Hassan Abi be on a terror watch list then? Because he has shown public support for terrorist organizations. He has actually interviewed terrorists on his own stream and everything else. So by your standards, he should be on a no-fly list right now. Is that what you're saying?
I think the no-fly list is kind of shit, but I think that if the government determined that the threshold, and for my threshold, if the government said that, hey, that meets my threshold.
To be clear, I don't care what the government, what you like.
I know.
I'm asking you.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
I just want to make sure.
I'm saying I don't know all of the information. So, like I said,
real quick, just interject about the Hassan situation, right? Obviously not. And the reason I say obviously not isn't because, I'm a champion of his right to not be investigated. I'm assuming the government already did the investigation, and what they found was that his dad works with the U.S. government as a billionaire in Turkey, and that his brother works for Boeing and is one of those people that funds the military-industrial complex that bombs all the brown people over there anyways. And he's nothing but a fucking hypocrite who has a bunch of billionaire and millionaire family members that all are the people that are actually making the moves to bomb those people in those countries anyways. And then they were like, oh, he's good and fine. He's just pretending to be a socialist on the internet.
I think that if it came out that Hassan was hanging around an actual group of people that have known terrorist ties and not doing the interview that he did, the interview thing would fall under free speech.
Not that time he hung out literally and fawned over him and said he looked like a hot pirate from One Piece.
Yeah, and he also in that interview he also said, "Oh, it looks like you got media training." So Hassan might play an idiot. He's not an idiot. He might play one, but he's not really one. But the thing is that would fall under free speech.
That's fine.
Whatever. It would fall under the whole free speech right to do journalism and interview people and that sort of thing. It would have to be more than one. So that was the only one that we know about. He wasn't physically in the location with the person. I don't think that rises to my threshold.
He's raised money for.
Here's the issue. He's
run which terrorist organization?
UNWRA.
UNR is not a terrorist organization.
Okay, so real quick,
Israel lied about a lot of stuff. We don't need to get into the first debate.
Hold on. No, so real quick, right? There's a problem with this. Where do we draw the line thing, right? Setting aside my tendencies to believe that like the state will grow always, right? Because I think we've kind of seen that, right? Setting that aside, right? The reason that the state has grown less in the United States versus many other liberal democracies in terms of private individual rights and private industries' rights is because we have a fairly strong constitution. I would say not nearly strong enough, in my opinion, but at the end of the day, it's just a piece of paper, right? But that piece of paper does enough people believe in it that it is kind of like it's real enough, and the courts seem to follow it okay. And so when you argue that like we ought to water down the Fourth Amendment, right? That there's these like you have to give a really very, very clear line when you say the government is now allowed to invade people's private communications, go into their homes, right? Like you have to give a very, very clear line, because anytime you don't give a clear line over and over again, what you're going to find is that the government will abuse that authority that you give it.
Sure. I'm not going to disagree. The government will abuse its authority if given the latitude to abuse its authority. Right now, we have some of that, but we don't have that as often, like you just said, as some other governments do. And that's because we have a court system that helps keep things in check. So the court system would still be like, look at all the facts and evidence in question. Sure. I mean, the FISA courts aside to a degree, because we can probably agree that FISA is almost just a rubber stamp.
It's a rubber stamp.
But there's there's reasons that happens. The government doesn't bring in cases that it necessarily thinks it can't get a warrant in. There's
right, but that's what we're talking about here. It's important to know that that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about like police officers and whether or not they have egress rights to your porch, or police officers and whether or not they can use a drug dog to go around your house. We're talking about federal agencies and their capacity to say that we have a right to track protest groups that might have foreign malign influence and utilize all of those powers and authority under the Patriot Act to get those rubber stamp approval processes. And now you're talking about like you're okay with these amorphous kind of gray lines that we show over and over again. Like everything that you've stated would apply to every communist on Twitter. It would apply to Hassan. And then you have to be like, well, no,
it doesn't, because they're not, because like you said, you and I almost agree on this. I think I just have a slightly lower threshold than you do. If you said that it has to be clear communication, that's what I was trying to get at. So you said it has to be a clear communication of joining a group that we know is an issue. Mm-hmm. But if we have I don't know, 50 people, I don't know what the correct number is. This is me spitballing right now for this debate, right? Say we have a person that hangs out with 50 people, and 3 of them are actively engaged in a foreign influence campaign that we know about. Well, that person, that group of 50 people that all hang out together, and those 3 people there, maybe look into those people a little bit more, just a little bit. Not necessarily fucking going to getting a warrant to invade everything.
I respect your inability, and this isn't because you're incapable, but because of a lack of imagination or anything. It's just I understand that you're like some number. Like I respect that your line is there needs to be some number of people that are problematic in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
The problem that I have with that, right, is that when I say we need a clear-cut thing, we need a clear-cut thing. And so like you
That's where
palling
judges
around,
come in.
like, so for example, what you just said would apply to Barack Obama. Barack Obama needs to be thoroughly investigated because he's hung out with Weather Underground people, right? These are actual terrorist people.
Well,
he's considered them mentors.
Weather Underground,
Right, like-
what those people were like basically reformed at that point that he was hanging out with them.
He was still a member.
People that had previously
No.
bombed
This
buildings,
is
but they were
previously reformed. That's what that's a
Right, but this is
distinction
what
I
I'm
think
talking about.
matters.
Right, but exactly, that's what I'm talking
Why
about.
wouldn't
So
that matter?
This is what I'm talking about, is that I'm actually arguing that those things do matter, that there is nuance to these things, and that's why you have to have extremely clear-cut shit, because when you don't, and you say, three people with like terrorist kind of ties, I can go, well, that applies to the fucking former president. That's the problem.
No,
You're illustrating the problem.
I said actively engaged. I said actively engaged in things that we deem to be, as in the people in this panel, deem to not be good.
$5 from Testicle Johnson.
Well, then that
to
would
say
be a
the USA Freedom Act allows for monitoring internet traffic and search history by the government without a warrant right now, today. $5 additional from Testicle Johnson to say FISA 702 was used 200,000 times involving U.S. citizens in 2022, despite explicitly stating it is prohibited from doing so. And $2 from Testicle Johnson to say Fabio L. So
Based Testicle Johnson.
Hashtag
Look,
not an argument. I don't know.
They give me $2. I'll repeat it every day. But no, I understand the your concern for like a very strict line. I don't disagree actually. I think I hate to say it, but I'm kind of with you on this one. My concern though, what I am curious about is lower level investigations. So I'm not talking about like getting a wiretapping you, right? I'm not talking about that. But should you be a person of interest, right, to the DHS if all your friends have ties to Hamas? I think there might be something there. Like if all your buddies have ties to Hamas, maybe they should at least pay more attention to you. Not talking wiretap, not
we all
talking
agreed on
invading your
that.
privacy, but
we already agreed on that because we all agreed that when we were talking about going through their Twitter, right? Like it's like yeah, if you're hanging around a bunch of terrorists, but like then like yeah, we should be going through your Twitter. We should be looking to see if there is publicly available information that proves that you're actually joining these people or something, right?
What about
because if I go through your Twitter,
like undercover investigations?
Yes, undercover investigations undercover investigations do not require a warrant.
So
here's
I actually have
these are problematic.
Kind of a weird part on this is because of things like the Governor Whitmer thing, where you have actions of entrapment going on.
Yeah, that was not proven though. You go ahead and say your piece. We don't. That's a whole other debate
right now.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it so it doesn't
general
go on.
point. I want to hear Aircraft Sparky's thoughts
So,
on this. General point.
It's common, even if it's not that case. Like
you have a group that again has come to the attention of federal authorities that hey, a lot of these people have ties. We don't have warrants or wiretaps or anything on this, but maybe we should send a guy in to kind of like become a part of it, kind of play along and see what happens. Is that wrong? What do you think?
There are times when undercover operations are warranted and good if they are managed properly. The problem that we have seen with some of these infiltration tactics that have been used is they have been used to gaslight, to escalate. They have not been in a de-escalation mission. They are there to actually encourage and entrap people into doing deeds to justify their operations.
I think you're maybe a little heavy-handed with that. Like it has happened. What I would say is
like it can be thrown out in court.
What I would say that's a more accurate way of describing this maybe, right, is that it's a corrupt incentive structure. And the corrupt incentive structure exists because when you have a government agency that isn't a part of the market or anything, right? They have to, and they're trying to justify their budget. What they constantly need in competition with the other budgets, right, is not, they're not there to provide safety. That's not how they're measured. There's no measurement of no terrorist attacks happened in Florida and you were in charge of Florida, therefore you did a good job, right? What the way that the success is measured is how big of a guy did you take down? What was the crime that you stopped from placing, right? And so what ends up happening in this corrupt incentive structure is that they're looking for a bigger fish constantly. And they're willing to engage in enabling the behavior, and they're willing to let the behavior continue for longer than it should in an attempt to get a bigger fish, or to justify bigger budgets and things. And so I don't know that it's so nefarious as like they're trying to create terrorists, though they do that sometimes. Like they have done that with like homeless, mentally ill people that were like, given near life in prison, and their terrorist attack was a fucking fertilizer bomb on horseback. Like they have done that before, but for the most part, it's a corrupt incentive structure. And so I'm perfectly fine with getting a warrant to infiltrate a group so that you can get enough evidence on all of the people. But the moment that you start but the problem with that is the moment that you're in there, you have to be one of them. And so you have to engage in some level of illegality, or at least presumed illegality, in order to not break your cover. And the problem is that has never been managed properly. Because what we have done is we have gone from allowing someone to be just enough of a participant to blend in, to allowing them to gas up, fund, and do all kinds of things to make the situation worse. And sometimes it blows up in their face. And that corrupt incentive structure is a real big problem that, like, until dealt with, undercover investigations on terrorist organizations need to be reined in severely.
Okay, Hammer, you were trying to get in there. I saw your
Sure,
hand. Go ahead.
I have a question, and this is what seems to be happening. So say like say you're like the DHS, okay? And on campuses, the Jewish population, like the Jewish students, seem to be coming out and saying that we don't feel safe. We feel like there's a lot of hate groups. We feel like there's a lot of antagonism. There are these protest groups that are pro-Hamas, and it's making us feel unsafe. And we think that they're up to something. And then again, you're the DHS, you're just hearing this, right? You haven't done an investigation. And then obviously on the Hamas side, they're saying, oh, we're not up to anything. We're just protest groups, whatever. Like, what at that point, what do you do?
So again, I think, as I stated before, right, campuses are some of the safest places in America in terms of crime rates. If you look at any of the crime statistics, lowest amounts of hate crimes, lowest amounts of crimes, lowest amounts of sexual assault and rape. There's this like myth that was perpetuated for a while that like rape was like rampant on campuses, but it was like way worse in the inner city or in high crime areas in general. So what I would say is that, like, I understand that people's fears can be valid, right? And I don't think it even needs to be, I don't even think it needs to actually be a terrorist attack or anything to be a Jewish person trying to go walk to class and walk by a group of people saying globalize the Intifada, which at what was it, Stanford, I believe? I could be wrong. It might be a different Ivy League, right? Where you are hearing someone basically say, kill all the Jews in the world is being chanted as you're trying to make it to class. Like, I understand that's fucking terrifying. And I understand that they feel unsafe. What I would say is, for the most part, that is a job of campus police and campus security. I think colleges get paid inordinate sums of money on bloated administration fees that they ought to be using maybe during these unprecedented times to protect their students a little bit better. And I would say, and I would also say that yes, I do think DHS has, I don't really think DHS should be the one involved here. As I said before, I think probably FBI, but if so long as DHS is going to be the one tasked with this, I do think that they should be investigating potential threats. I do think they should investigate to a certain extent, but this need for like this deep tie with local law enforcement and this bloat in areas that are, again, statistically speaking, the safest areas is really just them trying to bloat their budget and them trying to write reports to justify their positions instead of doing things that are actually helping with our tax dollars.
I'm not totally familiar with college campus police force funding and their level of ability to operate. But I don't know. To me, it seems like
They have
that
more
if
rights. They're kind of like game wardens. They have more
Sure,
rights.
but do they have the ability to successfully investigate and draw those? I don't think they have access to the resources they would need in order to properly investigate.
Depends on the university. To be fair, depends on the university. Where I went to OU, our campus police at OU had more resources than the Oklahoma State troopers did.
But the issue Fabian brought up perverse incentives when it comes to police, campus police themselves. There's a lot of perverse incentives there because they're paid for by the college, and when they're tasked with investigating things, they have in the past. I don't know so much anymore. It's been a few years since I looked into this. Letting campus off the hook for some issues.
It really does depend on what's going on. So there was like 3 major events that happened while I was attending there. I graduated from college when I was 40 years old. Okay. We had the it's okay to be white thing where people put up the little flyers around the doors and people feign to be scared about that. We had the Identity Europa people.
They probably were scared. It was just
put up posters and people pretended to be scared or actually was scared, whatever. And then lastly, we had a football player shatter a girl's jaw in 3 places because she denied him his
football
blue rights, and she called him the N-word, and now he's in the NFL and she can barely talk. The campus police said, "Oh no, he didn't do nothing wrong because he's a football player," and that's kind of sad.
Oh, shit.
So yes, there is corruption with those police departments. He's back, but there's corruptions within these police departments, no doubt. Okay, I don't think that there's
I just was bringing it up.
Police department.
Sorry, I was just bringing it up for the perverse.
Oh shit!
Incentives.
Okay, you guys are all back.
We've lost.
You got hold on. I missed the last 2
got
minutes
lost.
of every single thing that happened.
It's fine. We're just talking about police campus officers, so it doesn't.
Yeah.
Unless you want to relitigate that, it's.
No, we're fine. Okay, sorry about that.
The way these departments are funded or through the endowments of these different universities.
Right.
So the University of Memphis
hold on.
is going to be paid differently
hold on.
than the University of Oklahoma.
Okay, it's what's important to state. What I was trying to say about the local authorities, right, is that yes, if it is DHS, so far as DHS is the one tasked with this, it's DHS's job to investigate actual credible terrorist potential threats, right? It's DHS's job, not local, not like I'm near VCU Richmond, right? I'm a little ways away, but let's just use them as an example, right? They're in the city of Richmond. So Richmond PD and VCU police are kind of work both in that jurisdiction, right? It's neither of their job not really to like investigate foreign malign influence and like some terrorist cell that might put a pipe bomb in a building or something, right? That's DHS's job, right? And they need to be tracking foreign terrorist funds through bank account ledgers and things like that. They need to be tracking money from these organizations. And then when that money ends up going to a activist group or something, then yeah, they might look at the activist group and see if they have anything publicly available that like warrants further investigation, something that actually gives them ability to have a warrant. And yes, it's okay I don't have a serious problem with them going, hey, this protest group, we don't have any direct evidence whatsoever of them doing anything, but we know they're getting a bunch of terrorist money. Like, do you have any information? And they're like, hey, we have information. And that is not what is being asked for, because that's kind of what already exists, but there is some level of intercommunication that is the job of DHS. That was why the entire reason DHS was originally constructed was because 9/11 occurred and the CIA, if all of the information that existed between the FBI, the NSA, and the CIA, we could have stopped 9/11. Like if you'd have put all that information together, we absolutely would have known that 9/11 was coming. And because they weren't communicating, at least this is the government's story, we'll just leave it at that. Because they weren't communicating, there wasn't that. So this gives a justification for the DHS to be this kind of like pseudo-federal agency, but also a communication agency. The DHS is mostly about facilitating communication and resources between different policing authorities. It's their job, for example, when the FBI says, hey, there's like Moms Against Liberty is dangerous because dads are screaming about the trans at school boards. And then DHS is the one that's like, all right, well, we'll look at these people and put them on a list. We don't want that, but that's what they do.
If you've been in the military intelligence community at all, they're basically 35 Foxes. They're an all source wing and fusion center for all information police officers on the federal level. So they have stuff for the military, stuff for the CIA, NSA, ODNI, etc. That's what they do. They synthesize information, help facilitate communication, like Fabian was saying, and create reports. That's their
And then they
primary job.
compartmentalize themselves to where they don't talk to each other. That's why we have so much bloat in the government to have what
They are talking to
16
each other. That's
different-
the whole point. That's the whole reason why
really
DHS was
don't.
created.
That's why there's 17 different intelligence agencies that
There's
operate.
17 quote unquote different intelligence agencies because they do different things and are tasked for doing different things and have different expertise. You don't have the same.
Don't get me wrong.
You don't
I'm
have the
not-
same intelligence wing on a Navy aircraft or a Navy aircraft carrier that you do in Bagram Air Force Base with the U.S. Army and Air Force. You don't have the same.
DHS.
capability.
I think DHS is a symptom of a disease, as far as I'm concerned, which is a growing intelligence apparatus that all of a sudden needed someone to help all of these growing intelligence apparatus communicate.
I mean, there was
Because
also
we're doing so
there was
much
also
more
issues
that
with
we shouldn't be doing, but
there was also issues with laws saying that they couldn't communicate, or at least if there wasn't a law, there was a practice of saying they couldn't communicate. So
Yeah, there
whenever
was
the
like-
CIA got information,
yeah.
they didn't feel comfortable sharing it with the FBI because then that could be considered a police action by the CIA within the United States, which could run afoul of the Constitution and of the, or not the Constitution, but of the church agreement, whatever commission.
Yeah.
From the 70s.
Yeah. Well, you have it. I mean, you have an FBI agency that's basically their job is to communicate with the CIA. It doesn't do as much anymore, but because DHS exists. But again, like, so I think that there's something to that. My issue is obviously, again, I have to remind everybody because I don't want people clipping this, but they will, but whatever. Obviously I'm doing an internal critique from your guys' perspective for the sake of the conversation. I am an anarchist. I don't think any of these fuckers should exist, but insofar that they do exist, right? There is a very concerning and legitimate fear about the tendency of state agencies to become more and more enmeshed. Even if you believe that those incentive structures are not nefarious, there is still an understanding that the more they constantly demand to have more liaisons, more contacts, all of a sudden those people, once they're there, they're very hard, they become entrenched because nobody wants to lose their job. Everyone is constantly trying to justify their job. And unlike private companies, you don't just fire people because they're not making you enough money. In government, you just kind of keep them around. And so what ends up happening is this incestuous relationship and this financial bloat. You end up with a ever more expensive intelligence apparatus that is unnecessary. You end up with college campuses that are more expensive, that is unnecessary. And then you end up with all of these people with nothing to do but like try and watch and follow people. And you end up with like a Five Eyes expansion here in the United States where we're just constantly being watched for no reason, and I think there's a lot of potential problems that come from that as well.
Yeah, just as far as like the incentive structure is concerned, I think this is a problem in general with how humans operate when it comes to security. I don't think this is a particular government issue, and the reason I say that
I agree.
is because so the reason I say that though, like you said, hey, you can't just fire somebody if it's in the government. There's a process, right? So there's incentives there to keep growing and justifying your budget. That's true even in the private sector, especially in the private security sector. So there's been issues with private security agencies justifying their budgets by justifying their continued existence among the corporations and NGOs and stuff like that by saying, oh, we stopped this attack, and attack wasn't actually a thing. You can take it all the way back to the Pinkers where they infiltrated
we can
groups
point
and
out
plastic skulls. So
yeah, well, we can also point out when having that discussion, recognizing that like the private security industry isn't all that private, right? We're talking about like
that's why I brought
you know
it.
what I mean? Like they're very enmeshed.
That's why I brought it all the. That's why I brought it all the way back to the Pinkers, the Pinkertons,
Pinkertons, yeah.
Pinkertons that that
Who still exists, by
existed.
the way, which is wild.
Yeah, they still exist. Which is, I mean, they're great at private investigations. That's their bread and butter. But they did justify their existence with private groups by saying, "Hey, there's this group that's trying to unionize here. Let's go bust some skulls. Let us do it." And they were doing the same thing. They were infiltrating the groups, putting them up to like unionize, so that they could justify their existence to the corporation that they were in, and then decided to go and bust skulls. Like that's what they were paid to do. Like it's just one of those situations that's just how people are. And to change that,
but
but
there's a difference there, right? There's a very, very substantive difference. I do agree that the Pinkertons were engaged in kind of creating, especially in Colorado, they were engaged in kind of like blowing up and gaslighting the concept of like potential unions so that they could engage with local law enforcement, by the way. So we can talk about it being private, but they were also with the cops, and busing up and, potentially murdering quite a few women and children, specific, in a few of those instances, when the labor fights were going on. But what I'm specifically talking about, right, is the inability to get rid of them, right? So like, as Milton Friedman said, there's nothing as permanent as a temporary government solution, right? There may be instances where people fearmonger and use that fearmongering and as in a fraudulent way, and against people's fears as a means of gaining power, gaining money to justify security actions that don't need to be done. But what I'm saying is if they get entrenched with local law enforcement because of this Israeli-Palestine conflict, right? Eventually, this conflict dies down in some way, shape, or form or another. I'm not saying it does, but I'm just saying let's say it does for the sense of the hypothetical, right? Let's say fucking Utopia Land exists in 10 years and a 2-state solution, the PLO actually fucking come to the table, and like the right wing fucking Israelis actually fucking come to the table, and nobody decides to snipe a child or like throw a rock at somebody during a protest. So they actually get a 2-state solution, right? Those people that were given there because of like the protests, most of them are never going to not have that job. That job they're not going to be like, oh, well, now that that's no longer an issue in campuses, we don't need this extra level communication. We're going to do some slash and cut the budget and make sure that we get, pull DHS out of the schools. No, they stay there. They stay entrenched until the next emergency. And then we have to add more people.
But the reason I said that the incentive structure is similar is because they would justify their budgets to anybody that was paying them, and then because they're the experts when it comes to security, it was likely that they would kowtow to it because they're like, well, you know about more security, you know about this information better than we do, so we're going to end up doing it. I think that this is just an issue that needs a different sort of incentive structure that can be created, whether it's government, private individuals.
I don't think that you're showing that the private market does that to the same extent of the state. I agree that I already said that. I said I agree to the concept.
I don't think
the market.
I don't think it matters.
That people
I don't think the only reason that the government has it more is because the government's the one that is primarily providing this kind of
no, it's
structure.
not. It's not. No. The incentive structure is wildly different because yes, you can bullshit people when you're paid security for a while, but eventually if your bullshitting becomes too expensive, then you will get cut simply because you cost too much because your competitor isn't doing that. But when you're talking about a state apparatus, if someone is in a job that doesn't need to be done, all they need to do is write a letter every now and then about some bullshit thing, which is what this is, by the way. The whole debate is this letter of bullshit that doesn't need to be done, where they're just trying to justify their position and their budget. And what ends up happening is because the taxpayers pay it, and because it's separated by multiple levels of bureaucracy, nobody really votes on these issues. And so there's no incentive structure to get rid of them. There's no price mechanism. That doesn't exist in the market. I mean, that does exist in the market.
I understand what you're saying. I just don't really agree with you. So it's
I'm
fine.
glad
It's
that-
a difference in philosophy. We don't need
Okay.
to argue about it.
All right. Well, you don't have an argument, Roger.
Fair enough. Let's talk about, and we are winding down. This is kind of beginning to circle a little bit. Let me just ask, right? Like, is there a credible threat? Regardless of what you think should be done about it. Do we think that there is a credible threat of individuals in foreign countries, so whether it be China, Qatar, Iran, what have you, are they trying to infiltrate groups on college campuses?
Yes.
Do we think this is a credible threat? Why?
I think probably yes.
Yes. Absolutely.
especially with like social media. I mean, like every group has access to like everybody's social media feed. Like Hamas is like popping off on TikTok, right? Like it's very easy for anyone to like basically
That's why we had to get rid of it,
access
right?
It's what we don't have to get into that. But like, yeah, I mean, basically, yeah, every group has like access to like basically give propaganda to whoever they want, and college campuses, I mean, they seem to be tuned in to these conflicts, so it's political capital to be gained, right?
So the primary thing that the DHS is concerned about, as well as as well as NGOs that are looking at this from a security perspective, is not necessarily trying to infiltrate the groups themselves within college campuses. They're not trying to necessarily wiggle their way into the student union and stuff like that. It's more along the lines of funding and giving college campuses themselves money, because it is an institution that has to get private funding sources in order to stay in existence, and to use that in order to build up influence and change curriculum, things like that. Do we have evidence that that has actually happened? Not that I'm aware of, but we do have evidence that Qatar has donated I think it was $200 billion since 2000 or so. We have information that China has started trying to get people into tenure tracks in universities and fund certain kind of departments.
That's different though. That's IP. Like China's less.
No.
I'm just saying.
You're right. But in 2000, though, it wasn't just IP. It was also trying to influence how.
No. I agree.
Americans
I just mean
China.
if people, if I absolutely agree. I'm just saying most of the money, if you look up the numbers, right? Most of that money is just trying to have, for lack of a better term, Chinese spies in American universities to take intellectual property. And then funnel.
Oh yeah, that's I'm talking about something different, but yes, you're right. That a lot of
my question then, since we all seem to agree that there is a credible threat here, what is to be done about it, if anything? What should either A, individuals do, B, private institutions such as universities do, or C, the government do in order to combat this, if anything? What are our thoughts? And we'll kind of end on that.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to say that the U.S. should disallow all foreign ownership of land in America to begin with. If they don't have a footprint here whatsoever, it gives them less chance to influence. And any foreign investment into political institutions should automatically be barred altogether, including PACs. I'm sick and tired of foreign money being in our politics, because that is a true way how you infiltrate a country and destroy it. And when it comes down to what should the people do, well, it's simple. The universities, which are mostly state funded, they're mostly public universities that we have in America. We have few private, but all these universities, they need to actually hold up to their code of conduct, regardless of what side the activist is on. They enforce that code of conduct. There has been disproportionate actions by administrations at these universities for enforcement of rules based on their own code of conduct, and they need to be held accountable to that. Because as long as they allow the populace of that university, young kids are trying to be a part of something bigger than what they are, they're trying to learn how to engage in some form of activism to make themselves feel better for where they are and what they're doing. Don't punish the kids, but teach them all sides of these deals through actual classes that it would be legitimate in, like the history classes and things like that. Don't have someone going to human interaction 101 and have a 3-hour lecture on the tragedy that's going on in Gaza right now. I mean, it's not related to that subject. Yeah.
Any other?
But then, how would you do your Frarian education?
I know. Right?
I would actually say that they should probably keep a light hand. And I think that like when it comes to like social media, it's so sketchy. I actually don't agree with them banning TikTok. And I think that like any effort for them to like curtail the people finding misinformation on social media, like the government trying to do that, it's a little bit sloppy and it's not effectual, and people really don't listen to government officials. So they really can't fix students coming across like naturally misinformation. All they can do is investigate to see if any like groups are directly communicating with members of Hamas or any other like enemy group, and like also making sure people don't commit hate crimes. And besides that, I think there's really nothing to be done. They just have to like let it run its course.
Just let it happen. Okay.
In terms
Got
of
you.
the misinformation part, yes.
Fair enough. Okay, gang. This has been. Oh, if you had something to say, Cypher.
I thought we were all
outros,
going to give our opinions.
Yeah. Well, I was going to get to the official outros. As we
So are we not all going? Does anybody else want to go before she and I just say my piece?
Well, we're gonna do outros.
Well, if we're just gonna do
Oh, no, that's
outros
fine. Don't worry
now,
about it.
anyways, it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Okay. Gang, it's been great. It's been an interesting discussion. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to all the people who donated today. Really appreciate you, gang. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you want me to do more content like this, right, you got to support the channel, okay? If you want different kinds of content, right, support me there. But the way I know what you want me to do is by you supporting me, right? So hit that like button, hit that follow button, subscribing, gifting subs, all that. It's all helpful. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, our normal time, we're going to have Adam Mockler, I'm Really Important, Counterpoints, and Principles Before Politics. And we're going to be sitting down, we're going to be discussing how to change minds, how to persuade, the art of persuasion, right? How do we reach out to people who are maybe differing from us ideologically, differing from us politically? How do we get them on board, right? It should be an interesting discussion. Tune in tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. But I want to give each of these individuals an outro. I want them to tell you where they can find you, and then I want you to go and find them and subscribe to them or follow them or whatever you need. We're going to start in the reverse order we started. We're going to start with Hammer, and we're going to go around. We're going to give Cypher last word. Hammer, go ahead.
Sure. I guess my last word is I don't think that the DHS is up to anything pernicious. I think I think we can clearly see what they're doing. Maybe I might agree with this. Maybe it's a little bit bloated and a little bit inefficient, but I don't think they're like part of some big conspiracy or anything. So I really wouldn't worry about anything that's going on here. My channel is m_r_hammer at twitch.com or twitch.tv. Sorry. I mostly just do games and politics and stuff, hang out.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. Next up, Fabian Liberty. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Fabian Liberty. I'm an anarcho-capitalist, bordertarian, which apparently makes me different than most of them. And I bring that up now. Check me out, Fabian Liberty, everywhere. I'm on YouTube for the most part right now, but you can find me other places. Check me out on Twitter, I guess, for however long that account lasts. I just want to say about this. Listen, mostly this document is a nothing burger in the sense that anyone that has ever worked for a state agency knows that most of these documents are just fluff, begging for the government to give them more money, give them more power, because that's what these agencies do. That's how they get promotions. That's how they get awards. That's how they go from a GS-12 to a GS-13 is by, getting a big budget. And so it's a corrupt incentive structure. And that's kind of how the state works. And I think that's really what this document really shows in earnest, is the way in which, when we look at things like the Aspen Institute, when we look at CISA infiltrating Twitter and the Twitter files, when we look at all of the censorship that has occurred in so many different things, it's not about, this nefarious plot. It's about a bunch of well-meaning people working in NGOs and the government, trying to stop things that they think are bad, but it's a corrupt incentive structure that's not tied to the market. It's not tied to the actual purchasers and buyers that exist in the market, but instead it's tied to your tax dollars. And when it's tied to your tax dollars, it means money's stolen from what you can do with your money, what you know is best for you and your family. It's this theft that makes going to McDonald's a fucking $4 hash brown. That's the result of shit like this. It doesn't seem like it when you first look at it, but when you waste money on programs that don't work, that don't need to be done constantly, and you steal it from us, and then we end up in massive amounts of debt, and then you have to do things that end up inflating the currency, this is what we get. I will say, lastly, recommendation number 8 absolutely is good. Like DHS is the very last thing that they bury at the very bottom of the entire document is the only thing in here that absolutely should be done, which is giving temporary protected status to Palestinians that are studying abroad, to where they don't have to go back to fucking Gaza just because they happen to like finish their college degree and go get bombed by the IDF. Like, I think that's probably a good thing. And the DHS's recommendation there, like, hey man, this might cause less problems if people aren't terrified they're going to be sent back to a war zone, is like, I don't know, probably a good thing. Be careful what powers you give the government, because at best, it slows down progress. It destroys our ability to fight climate change. It destroys our ability to save lives and create innovation. And at worst, it will be used in nefarious ways to ruin your life.
Okay. Check him out, gang. Okay. Thank you for being here. Aircraft Sparky, go ahead.
Aircraft Sparky, populist constitutionalist. Look, Ronald Reagan, I think, said it best, and I'm probably going to mince this up terribly, but one of your biggest fears in the world should be someone coming to you and saying, I'm from the government and you should trust me, I'm here to help. The government has done nothing absolutely right, ever. We can look throughout the history of it. It's nothing but failure. It's a fail cascade. I work within the bureaucracy myself. I see it on a daily. Giving DHS more money so they can track a bunch of well-wished kids who are just trying to be passionate about something until they've actually done something to be investigated. I just don't see the point in it. Okay. Everyone was young at one time. Everyone had a passion about something. Yeah, people say dumb shit. It just is what it is. I agree with Fabian. The last deal that they suggest is actually a great idea. Giving protected status to Palestinians who are getting ready to graduate, not sending them back. That's a great idea. It really is. It can help build some stability and possible future leaders for that area and that community. I have no problem with little actions like that, but setting up an entire office within these universities so they can look over curriculum and everything and try to make sure that you're giving the government approved message is what I'm concerned with. The FBI, the IRS, many of these agencies started off as a temporary solution, and here they are over 100 years later, still in action. And that's the problem. Our government has gotten too bloated, and it's limiting our freedom. I find it interesting that someone who many on the left would claim, oh, well, you're against civil rights. I'm the one trying to defend civil rights here. I'm trying to defend the hippie protester at the college, where some of my more liberal friends here on the panel are kind of like, oh, no, they're a little sussy and we should watch them because they don't have an opinion that maybe I don't like, or maybe they do have an opinion, but I don't like the way they say it. You know, it's one of those things. More freedom is good. More freedom is always going to be better. Thank you, Wick, for having me. Enjoyed it tonight.
No, thank you. Check him out, gang. Really appreciate you. Last but certainly not least, Cypher. Go ahead.
Hey everybody, my name is Cypher. I do a weekly show on my YouTube channel under Cypher Reports. You can find it on YouTube. You can find me pretty much anywhere that there's a social media account. I'm there, at least engaging a little bit. So to go over kind of what we talked about today, as Fabian said, this really isn't a nefarious thing. It isn't really looking out to like necessarily create more bloat in the government per se. There is some earmarks in here for quick turnarounds. Recommendation on 5, directly earmark congressional funds for emergency grant funding to specifically aid campus with quick turnaround financial support to meet safety and related needs during the Middle East crisis.
We mentioned several.
In other words, that particular one there is talking about, hey, there's this immediate need, get them some funds so that they can help with the security needs. All that aside, the way that this was framed by The Intercept was bad. I think the more interesting thing to talk about with this in general is kind of how the DHS can monitor how foreign governments are trying to influence college campuses, whether it be through the infiltration in groups or faculty, or trying to get faculty and things changed under the guise of funding. So I think that's more important. But with that, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, gang. It's been fun. It's been great. We will see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll raid out. Wait, bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, bye, bye. Oh, my God. Takes so long. And we are out of here.
Awesome.
Short stream.
Oh, thanks again for coming, gang. Not, a little more agreement than I thought I originally thought we would have. But here we are.
I'm sorry. I read the report. Like when you asked me, like I had an opinion, I was like, well, here's my initial kind of read of it.
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
hadn't read the report or anything. And then when I read the report, I was like, The Intercept is like,
oh yeah,
clearly exaggerating this, and also the report isn't like this is what we're doing. The report is like, please give us money me now, right? Which is like, I've written those reports. Anyone that's worked for the government has, like, if they haven't written those, like if they've been tasked with at least reading them before, that like 90% of that is just asks that are never going to be done. But if you don't do it, then they'll be like, oh, well, you must not need anything. You must be fine. Like, so you have to write.
It's the big ask. It's literally the big ask.
That's really the problem with government funding in general. They really shouldn't be cutting budgets just because you spend less money one year than you do the next. That shouldn't lead to
cutting budgets because you suck.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, sure, but
cut them all.
Like, okay, for example, the reason the military burns through so much ammo. The reason the military burns through so much ammo every fucking year, even though they're not going to the range all the time, is because if they don't, they're not going to get the fucking bullets to go to the range when they actually fucking need to. Yeah. Like, there's no reason why that kind of cutting should happen. It's just stupid.
You'll see it on deployment where people they'll just like spend ammo at the end of their deployment.
I mean, they have to, though, because you won't get it next year. And if you don't get it next year, what does that mean? Could mean your life.
Can't tell you how many times I've helped burn
peacing
down.
out, Girl Scouts. I'll see you guys later. Bye.
See you.
Yeah, I thought you would have some interest in what they said there, Scott, because when I read they're too soft, the kids are too soft these days. Just like
that shit was funny. But again,
I mean,
like
it's kind of true.
It
is. There's also different people on campus, though.
Right. My biggest issue with it is that they have all of this. They have all of these citations, and none of them really address the primary cause for the money that they want. Right. None of them are actually like, they're just like credible threats. Okay, where, what? Like, I mean, obviously, some of the citations we're not going to have access to. Some of the information
a lot of it
that
is,
they have. You know what I mean? Like,
a lot of it's like
they're going to know things that we don't know.
Yeah, but a lot of it was asking share information, share this information.
Also, you kind
of
of. I'm still streaming, so like you can get mad at me if you want or not, but it's kind of fucking bullshit what you did at the end there a little bit, because we did talk about other things that there was funding for, even though it didn't say the funding. And you were like Fabian said, I'm like, yo, don't put me in this shit where you're saying that there isn't funding. I specifically stated there's bloat in there the whole time.
I went back.
It's not just number 5.
I went back. No, I know. I know it's not just number 5, but I went back and quickly reread it, and it's just like some of it is funding, some of it's not. It's just, but fine, it's fair.
I can't believe dude didn't even read the report, though. I had to call him out on it.
I mean,
I was the one that pitched at him for it. Well, you asked him, and then when he was like,
"Did you read it?" And he's just like,
he was mad at me, or like I'm being an asshole by being like, dude, I'm sorry, but if you get sent to debate on a 4-person panel, not a 6 or an 8-person panel, but a 4-person,
where you can hide so much easier.
Right, and you get sent an article, and the hyperlink to the whole thing the discussion is about is right there in the first sentence of the second paragraph. And they're like, well, I read DHS, I read all this, I just missed one thing. The topic? Bro, shut the fuck up. I'm sorry. Like, it's an insult to me.
I had to call that out, man.
The only thing I was doing was giving
it's an insult to you
doubt.
as well. No, I understand, Cypher, but even still, it's an insult to you. I'm mad for you. I'm mad for Sparky. I'm mad for me. I'm mad for Whit.
No, I get it.
Because, especially like I said, on a 4-person. On a 9-person panel, you can kind of be there because you're there for comedic value, or you're there to be like, you know what I mean? Like you bring on like someone that's like half drunk or something. Like, there's more blood sports, there's more drama, there's more entertainment from the stupidity of things. But like on a 4-person panel, you're there to be at least somewhat informed on the thing. And this is another reason why I don't go into all the ANCAP shit, but so much on a 4-person panel, because like I don't want to derail a substantive conversation with my political philosophy. I'm gonna drip it in with like, hey, here's these corrupt incentive structures. Here's how these things work. But I'm not gonna be like, fuck, we're fucking DHS. I don't know.
I knew Cypher. I knew that you look things.
I've never
up.
known Mr. Hammer.
I'm familiar with your work. If I remember right, you were an analyst for a while.
It was 35 November.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I worked with intelligence. I didn't work intelligence. I was more on the support side there. But yeah, it's one of those.
I was colorblind. They were like, you can't do intelligence work. I'm like, fucking, why not? And they were like, do you have any idea how much shit is color coded in intelligence? And I was like, no. And they're like, well, that's why you can't fucking do intelligence work. And I was like, that's fucking gay.
Were you trying to be an image analyst? Because then that makes sense. I don't think. But
no,
when you
join the army, if you join the army as colorblind,
I was in the army.
Right. But if you go in colorblind with deuteranopia, right, like where you're colorblind, there's basically like 3 jobs that you can do, and that's cook, medic, or
I didn't realize it was that.
Yeah, you
and like everything else, they're like nope, you're
now.
colorblind. It might not be now, but at the time, like they basically wouldn't let you do anything. 2011.
You joined when I did. Okay. I didn't realize it was that restrictive.
Wow. We were all in around the same time. I was in from 10 to 13 with aviation. But yeah, it's it's weird.
So I was like, well, I guess I'll be a fucking medic, because I had a perfect ASVAB and then like a 138 GT, and they were like, you can do anything, and they were like, oh, you're colorblind. You can be a medic, infantry, or cook. And I was like, fuck, are you serious? like, and that wasn't the recruiter fucking with me. Like, that was legit. Like, they don't let colorblind people do shit.
Should have went to the Air Force or Coast Guard, man.
I think it's more restrictive in the Air Force.
No, not for colorblindness. So,
really? Okay,
so when I went in,
when I was in the Air Force, I was, of course, aircraft maintenance, avionics. So he couldn't do electrical or avionics work.
Sure.
But he could have been a hydraulics guy. He could have been general aviation crew chief, or he could have been a medic or security forces, or there's all kinds of things you can do.
Yeah, that's weird.
But the Army is hyper focused on that colorblindness for some reason.
Yeah, I
think it's just an oversight, really, because they just don't want to deal with it, and they have enough. Like, they change those things when retention's an issue too, right?
Yeah.
So like, it's part of it. It's like, it's same thing with like tattoos. It's like, Army doesn't give a fuck about tattoos. They just go, do we have enough NCOs for the amount of privates coming in? Oh, we don't? Okay, well then no tattoos. You know what I'm saying? That's just like, it's like a lever they pull to reduce recruitment so that they, it's stupid.
But no, I appreciate it, you guys.
Nobody wanted me. Nobody wanted me until I came back with my ASVAB score, and then everyone was like, "Oh, fucking, you sure you don't want to join the Marines?" I was like, "You didn't want me before," and they're like, "We can make you do pull-ups. We'll figure it out." I was like, now that I got a perfect ASVAB, all of a sudden you're fucking ready to get me to do pull-ups.
Yeah,
Fuck
they don't
you
want
guys.
any more crayon eaters.
They were like, you're fucking fat body. We don't need you. Like, get the fuck out of here, right? And then I came back, like, because I like went in one of those spots where there was like all 4 branches were in the same area, and then they were like, and then the Army recruiters were like, my guy's got a fucking perfect ASVAB, bitch, and they were like, come on, man. And I was like, nah, fuck you guys.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, good times. Good being on a panel with you again, Cypher. Scott, it is always a pleasure to see you work. Just. I was hoping I could spool up that anarcho-capitalist shit just a little bit, man.
It just depends on the topic. It depends on the topic. Like there are certain topics where philosophy is more important, and I'll go full blown just talking about the anarchism and shit, right? But if a topic like this that's like really detailed in policy, right? Like, because that's really what this is about. This is a very detailed policy position. And like, yeah, I'll talk about the incentives and I'll talk about, and I'm here to recruit. Like, I'm here to propagandize you all towards anarcho-capitalism. Yes. But I'm doing a shitty job of it when everyone else is trying to have like a policy discussion. And I'm like, the DHS shouldn't fucking exist. Like, it's just not.
I asked
nobody wants to hear that
he
shit.
was looking for because when he asked me if I knew anything about it, I said, no, I have no opinion on it, but I'll read it and develop my opinion. Not a big deal, and I said big government bad, And he's like, "Oh, you'll be perfect then." And he linked the article to me, and he says, "I kind of want someone to say this is un-American." I said, "No, it's government overreach. That's the most American thing you can ever do." I mean, so he wanted more of that anti-American stuff, and I'm like, it really isn't though. It's barely just, hey, we just want a little bit more money so we can expand a little bit. Where's our inflation at? That's really what I read out of it. So
I mean, with government agencies, federal agencies, it is almost always, and I think we can mostly agree to this, even if we disagree to the level of which it is or how bad it is, but we can all agree that it's almost always 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? It is always, oh, well, we made some cuts. We were responsible with our money. We, all these things, right? That's the 1 step back. And then there's like some kind of emergency, some kind of thing, some kind of desire where we got to fix this problem, whatever that problem may be. And that's just setting aside the real issue as far as I'm concerned, which is, the economic calculation problem, which is that, like, I don't think the government can solve anything. And it's all high time preference behavior. It's all an obsession with, I see a problem. The market isn't immediately fixing this. So I'm going to steal money from the market and put it towards this problem. And hey guys, look, we magically fixed the problem. And it's like, but you don't know what your theft from the rest of the market did. Like, you don't know if by increasing taxes by 5%, medical companies don't put that extra money into the autism research. And now you don't know if we missed an opportunity to cure autism, or we missed an opportunity to cure Alzheimer's, or we missed an opportunity to cure cancer. Like, you can't measure what would have happened if companies that are where the highest IQ people and the smartest people and the most successful people would allocate resources towards the things that will give them the most success and continue to launch them forward.
We already examples of that. We have a dick measuring contest with all the billionaires trying to get to space. Not that that's not important. But that's what
right. And hold on, but hold on. That's a perfect example, because we look at it and we go, "What the fuck? That's so stupid." And yet, when the state invested in NASA massive amounts, everyone says now, all of a sudden, that was unequivocally good because we got microwave technology, we got styrofoam technology, we got all of these great, wonderful things. And isn't it great? Well, yeah, but we got all of this technological innovation because we gave money to NASA, and everyone's like, "Isn't that beautiful and great?" But now that the private market's doing it, all of a sudden it's problematic.
No. The reason I was saying that it was a dick measuring contest, because really what it boils down to is these guys had a obsession with trying to get to space. They now have the money to do so they're trying to do it so they can live out their childhood fantasies. That's why I called it a dick measuring contest. I didn't say it was
good.
bad.
But look at the innovation that's coming from it.
Actually, hold on.
We went from disposable rockets to rockets that land themselves and stuff.
Yeah. I'm not saying this is bad. I'm not saying this is bad. I was making a joke.
Yeah.
Also,
So,
the other thing with the NASA stuff, though, just one quick thing, because I do have to go soon. But with the NASA stuff, a lot of that stuff was made public domain as far as the patents that came out. So that's also another.
I'm against, for the record.
I know.
For the record, I'm against IP. So as someone that's against IP, like, I'm all for companies keeping secrets and having non-disclosure agreements. But like, once things are out into the market and people are able to reverse engineer it, I don't think you get to own the thing, because you don't get to own other people's factories. It's a little nuanced.
Sure, that's a little more might be a little more problemament now that we have big data, and it's a lot easier to reverse engineer everything.
Well, I don't
believe in it, but that's a separate conversation. I want to add an anecdote, because I think this anecdote really kind of elucidates in a narrative form and historical form what I'm talking about. There was there's a few companies in Japan, right? Bakeries, quite a few years ago back. And the thing about bakeries in Japan is, in order to be successful, they have to have tons of different croissants, donuts, eclairs, tarts, right? And so what they realized is there was a problem with this. Because they had so many different products, it was difficult to price the products effectively, because one thing that they could do is they could tier the products, right? So everything's $2, $3, $4, $5, right? Put it in one category. But that's not really a good pricing. It's just kind of like it would be simplified. Another way that they could do it is have individual pricing for everything, but then the cashiers would have to memorize like 200 different prices or a really complicated menu. And this would take a long time, which would slow down how quickly they could sell things. And once they realized this problem, they realized if we do a tiered pricing, we lose money. If we don't do a tiered pricing, we lose money, right? And so what do we do in order to make the most money? How do we make the most profit? Well, what they did is they reached out to artificial intelligence companies in the early stages and robotics. And what they did is they paid tons of money so that they could research and develop a camera system that was able to accurately, with 97% accuracy, determine the price of things based off of shape and color. And then this allowed them to make more money because they could have individual prices for every single item, right? And they didn't have to have a complicated menu or like really, really intelligent workers that had memorized everything, right? They could just have like dumb kind of low wage workers be like, just throw things on there. And then the camera says it's this much. And then this is your price, right? Well, that technology was a big leap in terms of the technology that we use for visualization in AI. And it was very quickly used by pharmaceutical companies to get out medicine quicker and put it into pill bottles, and then very, very quickly used by oncology researchers. And they determined that it was a great tool for catching cancer early. This is the type of shit that the market does when you don't overly burden them with taxes that you could never plan, predict, or recognize would have happened without the the intervention. It's like when you take money and you go, look what we did with this welfare program, or look what we did this program. Isn't that great? That's the type of shit where, because bakeries had this extra money and all they wanted was profit, we now have systems that help us
Why
fight
do you
cancer.
think that they wouldn't have the and actually I have to go. We can have a conversation later, Fabian, if you want to.
Yeah, my DMs are
more
open
than
on
willing
Twitter.
to. So,
Fabian
yeah,
Liberty, or Discord too.
Okay.
I think if you friend request me or you join my server.
Let me just do that really quick. Message.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
Scott's
have a discourse on here already, so I'll hit you up later on it. But I do have to go. But thank you for
All right, brother.
let me
Take
stay
care,
around.
man.
See you. Bye.
Yeah, dude. The KC-46 debacle. I've been working on that. It's one of the programs I'm working right now. Oh man, dude. Boeing is fucking up. Boeing is fucked up so bad. The U.S. Air Force just won't get off their nuts. They need to fire him and get Airbus. I'm just saying.
Dude, I'm rereading Atlas Shrugged. I'm in part 2. I'm in part 2, and I owe an apology to the objectivists and the Randroids, because when I read it when I was younger and I was much more of a neophyte in libertarian and objectivist philosophy, it was awful. It was awful. Didn't get it. Yeah. Couldn't get it. But now that I'm rereading it as an adult, with a fully developed brain, and also as someone with an understanding of objectivist philosophy, right? It's genius. It really is. Like I was blown away with how much I missed in my first read, because it is so fucking predictive of the world that we live in now. It's not like DEI. People look at DEI and they go, and then people blame the DEI for like the bridge getting in the Michigan bridge, right? And then it's like, dude, a white guy was driving. And it's like, and it's not DEI. But now that I'm like rereading Atlas Shrugged, I'm like, no, it is. It is DEI. It's not DEI that caused that boat to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's not DEI that caused that, but it's this entire fucking culture that is obsessed with redistribution of wealth, with equal opportunity, with all of this overburden that has held us back so much that we're now living in a world where like our infrastructure is collapsing, where our technology is not moving at the pace that it should be moving. And it's because we're more worried about DEI. We're more worried about a company being good to the minorities than we are giving the minorities jobs because companies innovated and we need them to work for us. Like we're doing the exact opposite, and like we're our society's rotting. And I'm just like, fuck, this bitch was so goddamn right. Like I owe an apology to the objectivists. I do. If there's any watching, I'm sorry.
It's the decadence of the West really coming to reap what they sow. That's really all it is. Look, they warned about this when NAFTA was being introduced and stuff at the end of the Reagan and Bush era into Clinton. The chickens are coming home to roost here in the West.
Yeah.
Our infrastructure's collapsing. The reason, the real reason why that bridge collapsed in Maryland, DEI has something to do with it. But if you looked at the requirements to be a harbor master, they lowered the requirements for harbor master recently. They've done the same thing for commercial pilots, and it's because no one wants to go into those career fields because of how overly regulated they were.
Well, hold on. Also,
it was hard to get there, and now they made it easier, and a lot of people are falling through the cracks.
I agree, and I'm with it. But just to be fair, retarded stressful job. Like air traffic controllers is the number one job for suicide rates in America. Harbor master is a very similar job. What?
Number 2 is dentist.
Yeah, oh yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because you're just so hated. But yeah, the stress levels.
No, it's not that. It's not that. It's actually the first sociological study that was ever really conducted, like by Durkheim, was when he discovered that like wealthy white men have the highest suicide rates, and like nobody expected that. And then because he actually looked at the data and compared and was like, why are the suicide rates amongst the most successful, least oppressed people the highest? And it's because of the family expectations and the expectations that come from everyone around you. And there's a lot of overlap there with dentistry, which is a lot of people that are in dentistry are like wealthy, come from wealthy families, got into a job, but their parents are still like, you're not an engineer or a doctor like you should be. And it's a stressful job.
You're not a real doctor.
Yeah, but it's yes, as Slender said, quiet desperation. Yes. I'd forgotten the term. Thank you for that. But yeah, like there is a, and so it's like, where's the lowest suicide rate? It's black women. Black women have the lowest suicide rate. Right. And so it's like, it's kind of a reverse metric of oppression in our society.
Because of the low expectations.
Insofar as you want to, well, it's just because there's not this, I mean, low expectations is one of a multitude of factors. Another thing is like when you have a lot, when you lose something, it's more devastating. Right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when you so basically when you start from the bottom and like you have a setback later in life, you're like, been through this before, right? You have resiliency. You have a certain resiliency that's built up, right? But when you come from a wealthy white family and like everyone tells you that the world is your oyster and you go and you get a college degree and then you go out into the world and you live on your own and all of a sudden like nobody likes you and you're not that successful and you can't be in a good, and your marriage is falling apart. And it's like, and you've never really been through it before. And then you hit a midlife crisis. You end up starting a shotgun because you haven't been through it, you ain't been through the shit before.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of factors, but it is an interesting thing, right? Human being, like, and even, and there are factors we don't know about because that's just how humans work, right? There are things, and then there's also, causation and correlation, right? One of my favorite examples of causation and correlation is, did you know that, there's a direct correlation between how many palm trees exist in a county and how old the people are in the county?
No, I didn't even.
Makes perfect. That. Yeah, you wouldn't consider it, but what happens is you get older, you get more money. What happens is you get older, you want to move to a tropical climate. So when you get older, you move to fucking Florida or you move to the beach, you move to where it's warm because you have the money to do so. And because you're older and older people tend to prefer warmer climates and retirement homes are built there. And so there's a direct correlation between the average age in a county and how many palm trees exist in a county. But like palm trees don't cause old people to, like if I plant a palm tree, my people in my house aren't going to start aging, right? Like it's a correlation thing, right?
Well, it's really funny now that you mention it. Did you know the area with some of the highest STD rates per capita is?
It's the elderly. It's without a doubt the elderly.
It's the villages.
It's retirement homes.
The villages in Florida. It's around Ocala, Florida, where they have that big retirement community. And it's
because like what the fuck out? Like you don't give a fuck at that point.
Yeah, all they're doing is fucking each other.
What do you like? I mean, right? You know what I mean? Like, what are you gonna do? Like, your wife's dead. That's another thing too. Is a lot of these people have been in very long-term monogamous relationships, and now they're alone, and they just want companionship. And they've been monogamous their whole life, but now they're right. Crazy. Now they're like, let's pop a Viagra and let's get some mayonnaise lube and let's go to town, Granny. You know what I mean? Their standards are low, I guess. I don't know.
Hey, look, what looked good to me when I was 19 isn't what looks good to me today at 46. So I mean,
I don't know what
tastes
you're talking
change
about.
over the years. Dude, I love a young woman, but then they open her mouth and I'm like, oh, you're so ugly. Okay, moving on. Because they just
Yeah,
can't,
that
no
to me sounds like
intellectual.
I'm not trying to insult you. I'm really not, or call you a liar, right? I believe you. I believe that you believe what you're saying, and I believe that may be true for you. But I think for most part, I think a lot of dudes say that because of social pressures. I think most dudes find 19, 20, 21-year-old girls retarded fucking hot compared to fucking 30-year-old women.
They're nice to look at. I mean, I'll give you that.
They're nice to do a lot more than look at. Let's be honest.
I'm sure.
I just think there's a lot of code when it comes to that. Okay, fair enough.
Possibly.
Fair enough. You're married. Yeah. Okay. I mean, fair enough.
So,
Yeah, I'm not trying to get you in trouble.
No. My wife knows. My wife knows. A pretty girl walks by, I'm gonna look, But then I go, oh yeah. Once she opens her mouth, I'm gonna be like, oh, you're a fucking idiot. Moving on. Because I actually do think about that kind of stuff. But man, it's good being on.
Maybe
air
I'm just
with
a
you
degenerate, and I view people differently. Like what ends up happening to me is you don't get unhot, you just go in a different category. You go like, oh, you go in the fuck box. You don't go in the like talk to box. Like that's what happens to me. Is like I just value you differently. Like the moment you open your mouth and you start saying like really dumb shit, I'm like, oh, okay. Like you go in the like the fun for like a night box.
Yeah. You have fun with her, and then you order her the Uber. Get the fuck out of here now. Oh, don't want to wake up and see you in the morning. Well, man, it's good being on with you, man. I'm glad you're back.
It's the best thing. That's the best thing about cold showers. So once you guys get used to cold showers, if you have a bad one night stand, you can be in the shower forever. You can stay in that shower forever if you're used to a cold shower. If you're used to hot showers, you run out of hot water and you're like, oh fuck, this bitch is still here.
Put on some Boy George. Do you really want to hurt me? Just cry in the shower.
All right, brother. I was happy to see you. Yeah, I'm coming back.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start doing Wednesday streams, and probably most Mondays I'm on Prime Guys still. I never stopped doing Prime Guys. I just stopped.
God, I
streaming.
I can't. The group that orbits him, man. It's just is the transistor still on with him all the time?
No.
What? Oh, really? Okay. Because that was like the worst. I hated hearing
the people that are usually on, at least on Reverie, right, which is Mondays. It's usually almost always Corey Campbell, which is he's a. I'm trying to remember if he is I think he's a molecular biologist PhD candidate. Very soft spoken for the most part. Very, very, very leftist. But like the nicest leftist you'll meet. He's very polite. He's very Canadian. Then there's Lactoid, who's a libertarian, small L libertarian, minimal government libertarian lawyer. He's on there all the time. I'm on there all the time. And then who else is on there? iCal Rich is there all the time. That you're, left-wing Catholic. Which is, but he really knows his shit. But like,
yeah.
And those are probably your regulars that are there like all the time. Doobie's there every now and then.
I've just gone away from Twitch because there's too much degeneracy on it, and I just don't want to be.
Yeah, I'm not on Twitch anymore, but I'll be on a Twitch panel. I don't care.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I do it on Wednesdays only because I got my X account banned. Evidently, calling for ethnic cleansing of a land is a bad thing. Not saying kill them. I didn't say kill anyone. I said just move them. But hey, I'm very pro-Israel on the Gaza thing.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I mean, I'm slightly more pro-Israel than most of my libertarian brothers that are like just regurgitating like PLO and Hamas talking points.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm against statism, right?
Yeah.
So I'm against Israel's in that regard. I think Israel has a lot of fucking. I think here's what I think. I think Israel is engaged in a total war campaign, And a lot of people are calling that genocide, and they're calling it, which it isn't. It's not genocide. But I think it's perfectly fine to say they're engaged in a total war campaign against a group that is mostly trapped, and it has led to the deaths of tens of thousands of people. And I understand that their predicament is unique, but at the same time, I still absolutely condemn them for those actions in the way that they're going out.
I actually agree with your observation there. I really do. But the October 7th attack, I got bloodlust from that.
I understand that. I do understand that, right? Like, I do get that, like, Hamas could give up their hostages,
Yeah.
And I if they are still alive, I do get that, and I do get the concept that Hamas lies to its people and uses them as human shields, and tells them when Israel tries to knock the roof, which is the final warning that they're going to bomb a building, that these are all psychological operations by IDF, and not to believe them, not to believe the letters, and then they end up getting bombed, and then they use those numbers that Israel is trying not to kill. They're just trying to take out Hamas. And they use those numbers and conflate those numbers and exaggerate those numbers on top of it so that they can make Israel look like the most evil people of all evil people. Like, I understand a lot that, like, my fellow libertarians and people don't get. But at the end of the day, there's only so much you can bomb a trapped people where you have trapped them with your enemy, and you're bombing them both knowing that your enemy is using them as human shields, and you're not separating them and saying, look, there's a giant desert next to you. Here's a refugee camp. We're collecting every person in their fucking ID. And if we know that you're in Hamas, you're getting fucking arrested. If you want safety, here's a blue zone. Here's a safe zone where you won't get bombed. If they had done that, and they had been doing that, even though that would be difficult to do, expensive to do, and no guarantee that Israel would necessarily be safe in that regard, they would have a lot more moral justification for what they're doing. But right now, they're bombing trapped people, and that's, to me, like, there's no excuse for that.
And I understand that point of view. I'm really interested in a new red heifer conspiracy. They're stating that the October 7th attack was actually a response to the importation of some red heifers from Texas, because I don't know if you know what the red heifer thing is. If there is a red heifer discovered with no blemishes on it, it's a sign of the Messiah's coming or return, depending on which point of view you're from. And that would
this conversation got off the rails quick.
Yeah, that would mean the end of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I think Al-Aqsa, whatever the name of that mosque is on the Dome of the Rock, and so that would be the call. That would be the call for all Muslims to go to war with Israel and all this other stuff. And so they did that. They were doing that preemptively to prevent that from happening. Supposedly, that's the latest conspiracy around it, which I find laughable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
I find these conspiracy theories to be fun, and considering I'm from the return part of the Messianic loop, I find it even more interesting. But
I don't know. No. I like the Israel-Palestine thing is been. I got involved in it a little bit in the beginning. And then what ended up happening is all of my friends that were libertarians, content creators, they all left immediately. They blocked me. They were completely done with me. How dare you fucking criticize Israel in any way, shape, or form? And then every person that I criticized on like kind of like the pro-Palestinian side of being like, they were like, well, the Nakba is inexcusable. I'm like, yes, the Nakba is inexcusable. I agree with you. Here's another problem. It's also inexcusable to say from the river to the sea when, from libertarian principles, you had Jews come in, buy swamps that nobody wanted with money, and then build farms there. And we know when they first started, that Muslim population increased wherever Jews went to because Jews gave them fucking jobs and prosperity. And so it's like they only want to highlight and talk about the evils of Israel. And don't get me wrong, Israel has committed a fuck ton of evils, more than any other Western liberal democracy. Is there blood on the hands in like the last 20 years from Israel? Like they're in a unique position, because of their ethnicity and etc. for a lot of reasons, their location. But But it's just like I would hear dumb shit. Like I would hear Dave Smith and people be like, you know, the 6-Day War was, you know, was an Israel aggression. And it's like, you just gave me like a 1-hour podcast of like in-depth history and lore. And like, you don't even know the basics about how the 6-Day War started. Because these people are all getting from the same source, their information. It's like the same propaganda talking points. And like, they're not trying to actually look into the history at all. And it became this insane thing. So I've mostly stayed away from the Israeli-Palestine discussion because nobody gives a fuck about looking at it from a property rights perspective, right?
I mean, that is fair. And I'm probably the only one who openly will sit there and say I'm actually a Zionist online. But I'll, you know, I do it.
No, there's plenty.
So I'm not a shill though. I'll in the same breath I'll say the U.S. shouldn't be giving them any aid. They can do everything on their own. This is not our problem. Yada yada yada. Because I'm anti-interventionist. But I'll sit there and say,
that's my primary concern.
Right to exist. We're
funding both sides of the war.
Yeah. We're perpetuating a war and we're doing it financially, and it's
we're giving money to Israel for, you know, the dome and for other things, and you know, we kind of have special contracts with them, which is kind of like giving money, and then we give all this aid to Palestine. We're like, well, it's just aid. And it's like, dude, we give oil, we give food, we give water. Some of the food and water goes to the people. All of the oil goes to fucking Hamas.
Yeah. We're actively funding Hamas. And did you see the complaint about dropping MREs because they're saying, oh, well, they're being starved out. And so the U.S. dropped a ton of pallets of MREs. And so
I saw that. I saw that. And I feel like
MREs, they're not all halal. I mean, you know, so they have like one pork in a box and they're like, oh, well, they're trying to kill us and all this other stupid shit. And,
no, I mean, like, listen,
who cares?
Here's how I'm of two minds about it. Number one, yeah, like you're starving, so eat a fucking MRE. I've eaten them not starving plenty of times. Okay, like you're telling me you don't want your jalapeno cheese because that's the good
I'll
one.
Take that shit. Yeah,
I'll give you my peanut butter for your jalapeno cheddar any day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it's also important to recognize. I think it's important to recognize that you're talking to an indoctrinated people that have been under, as far as they're concerned, terroristic Israeli occupation for many of them. Because the people that are 20 years old, they have never not known a day in their life where they're free to leave Gaza. And obviously, you know, yes, if they have like a medical thing and they have to go to Israel, they can usually leave Gaza on like a visa, or if they have a job there, they can, as long as they don't have any ties, right? But where there haven't been occasional bombs, where there isn't a constant propaganda from everyone that lives there. I mean, you go look at schoolyard interviews, all of the children there, they'll interview the children there and they'll be like, I can't wait until I am old enough to one day, you know, be a fighter, to murder as many Jews as possible, to kill the Jews, and you're like, Jesus Christ, this kid's like 7 years old. And he's like playing marbles and he's flicking them. And it's like, what do you think about when you're flicking marbles? How this will one day be the rockets that avenge my family and brethren. You're like, Jesus fuck, bro. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, so these people are super indoctrinated. And then on top of that, I think you have a right to complain when you're getting bombed, even if it's like, I mean, it's not like, it's like, oh, you shouldn't be complaining, we're helping. It's like, well, could you help with the this? You know, do you see this, all of this? Like, can I complain about this? Am I now allowed to complain about the MREs? Can I complain about this leaning building over here that I'm worried might fall on me at any moment? Like,
so I did an exercise with the IDF once, and it was great. And during that time, rockets were fired, and I got to see the dome fire off, and I thought that was really cool. And then I started talking to some of the IDF people, and I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? And they're like, this is normal. And I'm like, it's a bad time when it's normalized that, okay, occasionally rocket attacks happen. We just go hide out in our little bunker. You know, hopefully the Iron Dome catches it and we move on. It's
right.
A lot of weird things have come out of this conflict from both sides. And it's things that you and I would not probably tolerate. I mean, we probably would if we lived there and that's all we knew, but you know,
right. That's kind of what I mean is that like,
yeah,
that's kind of what I mean is that like, you know, there's a certain, there's a certain hubris, I guess you could say, to people in the West that have no idea what the fuck they're talking about with the Israeli-Palestine conflict. Have no idea just how much you have to learn to have any idea of what you're talking about. Like, I went down a rabbit hole actually before October 7th for a couple of months because I realized that Israel-Palestine was a huge weakness of mine in terms of like understanding. It was like, and then it was a fairly big political, world politics thing. And so I was like, I gotta know more about this. I gotta know more. So I started researching on my own, and it was just like every time I would uncover a rock, there was so much more there. You know what I mean? Like, learning about the connections between, the religious lawyers that were advising the British, during the pre-UN, League of Nations, treaties. And they were when they were trying to give them in the 30s, they were trying to give the Palestinians a state. And and all of their leaders were like, we will not accept anything that requires us to, even acknowledge the existence of Jews.
Yeah.
And it's like that's, it's like people are like, look at this horrible right-wing Israeli militias that murder Palestinians. And it's like, yes, those things existed. Yeah, but look at all of these riots and terrorist attacks that occurred before those militia groups even existed from Muslims because they were Jews that were there. And look at these organizations. Do you not realize that during World War II, the Palestinians tried everything they could to work with Hitler to get them to invade Israel because they wanted them to wipe out the Jews in Israel? Yeah. It's like there's I don't want to say there's two sides to the story, but fuck, there's two sides to the story. And it's like, and one side gets told.
There's even more than that. What's funny, and what I think is funny with the left and they're following the Palestinian arc is that they're using the colonizer, the colonizer oppressor model on this. And okay, yeah, you could say that. Sure. Israel's a colony. Well, guess what? The colony has become a state now. And everyone recognizes it except for you. By the way, historically, y'all have been kicked out of every place you've ever lived because you try to overthrow who rules there, and you even try to overthrow your own people who are in rule. I'm just the Palestinians.
So here's the problem with that. Here's the problem with that. This is what happens when, and I'm not trying to insult you. I'm really not, right? This is what happens when you aren't hip to leftist philosophy. Because colonizer is a Mott and Bailey. Okay? So when they use the term, people use the term colonizer, and most leftists use the term colonizer without knowing, right? They use the term colonizer, and what that invokes for everyone colloquially is colonialism as a historical narrative that occurred from the 1400s to the 1800s, with different empires going and setting up British colonies, Dutch colonies, French colonies. That's not what colonization means when leftists say it. What colonization means is one specific ethnic or racial group that has a majority power and has captured the nation of peoples by the virtue of that nation having an Ein Volk. So this is Nazism, right? Ein Volk, that the people are a nation in and of themselves. This is when W. Du Bois came back from learning Volkism from the same ideology that created Nazism, said the battle for the black souls of black folks. That's why you see the term folks with an X. Yeah. What they're saying is regarding that, it's Volkism, it's Ein Volk, Volkswagen, it's blood and soil. What they are saying is that black people, or that Palestinians in Palestine, are a group of people that ethnically are a people and a nation in of themselves because they're a different power group, and that because the Jews have more power and because they're a different ethnicity, they are colonizers. And that is why you would call white people in America colonizers and black people not colonizers, because the black people never got their Harlem. The black people never got their own nation in and of themselves, of their own racial identity, and they're forced under the ideology of white supremacy, which is tantamount and one-to-one with colonizer and colonization. They have colonized us. They have forced on us their culture. So the black people don't have a black church. They have the white man's church. They have Christianity. And that's the colonization of the spirituality of black folks. And black people need to take their spirituality back with shit like Kwanzaa or some other dumb shit, right? There's a Mott and Bailey there. So that's what they're doing with the term colonizer. When they say colonizer, what they really mean is cultural Marxism and cultural Marxist philosophy, power dynamics, white supremacy, and you're evil because of your race. And then what it invokes in you is like, oh, they're colonizing because they're like a powerful European power that like set up a government and like took over a land, and like they think that that's wrong. And so that is actually harder to argue against, right? But then they use that, your acceptance that they're a colonial power in some regard, because you said it yourself. They go, yeah, so what? They're a colony. Now they're a state. You accept them as colonizer, which means that they've successfully laid the trap. So now you've accepted and snuck in what all the dog whistles the left are hearing. You've accepted white supremacy. You've accepted that a racial group is oppressed by this other racial group, all this other shit.
So I think the only way, and I hear what you're saying, but I think colonization was an overall benefit to the world. That's how a lot of technologies came to be, was through the colonization of these lands, learning different ways of thinking and blah blah blah, incorporating that and making technologies out of it. So there was evil in colonization. Sure, I'll admit that wholeheartedly, but in the same breath, I will say it was an overall benefit for the world.
I agree with you, but just know that's what the trap is. Right? I'm just letting you know what the trap is.
Yeah.
It's like it's the same. They're very fond of these traps, right? Christ is King is a new one, right? Because they're doing everything they can to make Christ as King tied to the Groypers, Nick Fuentes, white supremacy, racism, and then you have all these Christians that just be like, what? I don't care what anybody says. You can't take away my Christ is King. Christ is King. Christ is King. And then they're like, look at the white supremacists. And you're like, that doesn't mean that. And it's like, okay, cool. But like, you're kind of just doubling down on their trap. And like, if you want to do that. Right. But if you don't know the trap that's being laid, then maybe you shouldn't walk into it intentionally. Maybe you should say, you should learn what it is, and then you should be like, yeah, Christ is King. There's not a fucking racist thing about it. And the idea that you think that means something racist really shows you how fucking disgusting you're, and like go on a rant, like, like you have to inoculate against the trap that you've walked into if you want to reclaim it.
That's fair.
Which means you have to know what the trap is. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I'm get out of here.
No, you're awesome, man. Take care. And look, make sure you like and subscribe to this video of Scott here. Show him your support, and donate to him often. Copious.
Yeah, there we go. I'm coming back. Wednesdays, probably most Wednesdays, most Mondays, and maybe some other stuff. We'll see.
Awesome. Take care, Scott.
Appreciate it. Thank you. One second. Let me quit Discord. There we go. I have 12 likes. You just haven't refreshed. Also 15 viewers is like so low for me. But it's okay. I'm coming back. I have to humble myself and know that I can't consistently get the numbers I got a year ago. You know what I mean? Like, but it is a little rough to be like, oh, I have fucking 16 concurrent viewers right now. Oh, remember the days when I could get 70? But the other day I did when I did that Toyola and Jordan Peterson thing, I think we like peaked at 46. So it's not too bad. But yeah, I'm gonna start coming back, doing Wednesdays for sure. Ghost Recon, howdy. But I'm getting my kids tomorrow. I have a bunch of little projects that I need to do, and like I just haven't been. I have like a bunch of half completed shit. I need to hashtag do better. I remember I occasionally watched back then. Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah. I used to do pretty well on Twitch. Then Twitch just got worse and worse. Like Twitch really started immediately going downhill the moment Destiny got banned, honestly. Nice. You dealing with that every other weekend, Dad? I have them for Easter this year, so that should be fun. Well, my son and my daughter. I don't want to say I forget about my daughter, but like I see my son twice a week now, because I pick him up from his autism class, and then watch him for a little while. So I just see him a lot more now. Basically, the divorce only happened in June. Oof. Yeah, brother, I feel you. The every other weekend dad shit is the best advice I can give from someone that's been doing it for a couple years now. Oh yeah, well, fucking fair enough. The best advice I can give right now is now, before it becomes worse, you need to just accept that you have lost most of the decision-making power in how your child's life is done. That you have to learn to pick and choose your battles with your ex, because when you're an every other weekend dad and the other person has sole custody, their life is the day-to-day. So even if you make like a demand about like what school they go to or what a teacher happens or what medication they might take, or even if you're involved in that part, you're not involved in the day-to-day child rearing. And if you try and do your own thing, like parent in a different way instead of co-parenting, because you feel that your other partner is doing something that you don't like a diet that you don't like, or a schedule that you don't like, simple shit like that, you will end up causing yourself so much stress and pain. Yeah. I mean, if they would try to move out of state, that is an issue. They have to have your permission to do that, unless you sign away those rights anyways, in almost every state. Unless, of course, they're trans or something. But yeah, the best thing you can do is to just accept that you don't get to pick their bedtime. You might be able to change their bedtime a little bit. Yeah. But I mean, like, even if you have joint legal, that's not too bad. Actually, I don't know. As someone that lived through it, I think it's every other weekend dad stuff is usually just better. Because the thing that children need more than anything, especially autistic children, is consistency in schedule, consistency in patterns. And so when they're constantly jumping from one house to another, they're jumping to two different sets of rules, two different sets of lifestyles, things like that. Whereas like the every other weekend where you're just kind of having fun with the kid, is different, because it's like a little mini vacation, but they still have a consistent rule base. But yeah, just make everything a game. When you're stressed, make it a game, and recognize at the end of the day that you only have so much control, and be okay with that. You have to accept it, because you don't have any power to change it. You do that, I think you'll do all right. You'll get used to it. Good luck. That's all I can say to that is good luck. Courts usually side with the mom, especially if the mom has already had custody for a while. Yeah, it's a big fight. And also it can be incredibly stressful on the it's not just the $30K, right? It's the stress and strain that it puts on your relationship with the mother of your child. And depending on the age of the child as well. Because those hearings, those battles, the resentment that gets built and the poison there, that shit lasts a lifetime. I'm not saying you shouldn't fight for your kids, but what I am saying though is sometimes the fight isn't actually really worth it if it ends up doing more harm than good. Well, it just depends on the age of the child. If the kid's like 3 years old, the kid's not going to remember. It's not going to weigh heavy on the kid, right? But if the kid's like 9 and like mommy and daddy are going through like a massive custody thing, it's like it becomes rough. Yeah, I mean, like, and if she's not a bad parent, like, he's 9, of course. That shit doesn't last 10 years. I mean, it can, obviously, but those would be multiple different cases. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You do whatever's best for you. I wouldn't do it, but, you know, if she's good to the kid, you know, I wouldn't do that shit. She's probably going to lose. And you're going to you're going to spend a lot of money to lose. And then you're going to spend a lot of money to lose and have her fucking hate you because she had to spend money to win. And the last thing you want is a bitter and resentful baby mama. The best thing you can hope for is, like, you know, she goes and finds a new man that's good and, like, she gets really happy. Yeah, I appreciate it as well, Aircraft. I got stuff I got to do. Like I said, I got a big day. Well, big days coming up. So let me get out of here. And I will see you guys probably Monday. If not Monday, I will absolutely see you guys Wednesday. Yeah. See you then. Oh, make sure you join the Discord. Give me a like, give me a follow, give me a sub. You know, follow me on Twitter. Twitter and Discord, you're gonna see me all the time. You're definitely gonna see me on Twitter because I just get mad on Twitter randomly. Even when I have my kids, it's like the only thing I do is I'm on Twitter. I don't really check the Discord that much until like kids are asleep or something. But I'm fucking around on Twitter occasionally. So you'll see me probably see me post on Twitter more when I have my kids than when I don't have my kids because I'm actually busy doing a bunch of other shit. But like the kids are like playing or eating lunch and then I'm like, all right, let me get on Twitter and talk shit. Fabian Liberty. That's it. Fabian Liberty. You know, not Liberty _ Fabian. I don't know who that is. I don't know who that suspended account is. All right, guys. I'll catch you Monday. Or, what? Why did it get rid of your thumbs up? Oh my God. All right, guys. I'm going to get out of here. Appreciate you guys.